Chapter 443. Chu Yueyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus, Chu Yueyue quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Yueyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it, and it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time, without even giving them the chance to ask for help. It was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Yueyue looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like. I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time, he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Yueyue could see that he was telling the truth and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Yueyue was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do. Celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Yueyue, if it was in the past, he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now it wasn't the time. Why? Do you want me to help you? In any case, you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Yueyue squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Yueyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course, I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Lu Yu will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Yueyue, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. TSK. This psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Yueyue. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Yueyue, he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there, Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Yueyue didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, "Where are we going?" Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. Do you still remember this young master saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend? Chu Yueyue nodded. If they see you, they will definitely be very surprised. Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Jiang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Yueyue. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now. Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Chu Luiwei. That person is still in the Imperial City. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Situ Xingqian was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Zhaowen specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingqian, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingqian's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time, she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But no, her heart was filled with despair. Even Elder Zong Yi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with Father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace. A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingqian paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah, no wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to, Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingqian immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there, and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingqian held her breath, and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Jiding. Now, she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed, and his voice was hoarse. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you. Help me? Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me? She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. The man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves, and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingqian. At the edge, there were still bloodstains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingqian took a closer look, and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingqian a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingqian clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. You don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rongjin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence, this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? Now? It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move, as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingqian immediately shouted, "Wait!" She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her, and replied impatiently. Situ Xingqian did not dare to ask further as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Situ Xingqian mustered her courage and asked, "My physical body is seriously injured and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me?" The man's gaze landed on her hands. Situ Xingqian looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. "No." Then, he turned around and left. Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong, and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Situ Xingqian suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark, and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiyue followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Luiyue realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. "What's wrong?" Chu Luiyue glanced at the bell in his hands. This is Jian Fengqi's treasure, and it almost never makes a mistake. "Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing?" Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. "Do you not believe me?" "That's not it." Chu Luiyue paused. "Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end." Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Luiyue felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear, and listened carefully. Immediately, his expression changed. He doesn't seem to be here anymore. What? Chu Luiyue looked around. At this time, no one had passed by this place. Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there? Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Luiyue naturally followed without hesitation, but after taking 2 steps, she couldn't help but look back, and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance, he realized that Chu Luiyue was actually standing there, motionless. "Don't you want to track that person down?" Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Then she slowly said, "Why did that person first come to the palace and then leave?" Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. "You're saying that he purposely came to the palace?" Chu Luiyue looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls, as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment, she finally made up her mind. "I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time. In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Jiaowen and Situ Xingqian." But just as Chu Luiyue was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. "You're going in broad daylight?" Chu Luiyue knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment, it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later, there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 445. This speed was even faster than Chu Luiyue had expected. I'm afraid that Rongjio will rush into the palace with his men in no time. Chu Luiyue's mind raced as she looked at Jian Fengqi and asked, "Where's that person? Where did that person go?" Jian Fengqi pointed in a direction. Suddenly, the bell in his hand let out a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi instinctively threw the bell out. That item quickly broke into many pieces in midair. Then they all fell to the ground. It actually broke on its own. Jian Fengqi's fingers curled up slightly, and he could still feel a slight numbness on his fingertips. However, his mind was blank at this point. This. Chu Luiyue looked at him in understanding. "Young Master Jian, it seems like your tracking skills aren't very good. The other party had clearly discovered me long ago." Jian Fengqi's usual smile had long disappeared, and he looked exceptionally cold and stern. He was clearly traumatized. Chu Luiyue rarely saw Jian Fengqi with such an expression. If she was free, she would definitely be very willing to admire his expression in detail. However, she was not in the mood now. The other party seemed to be targeting Jian Fengqi, but she knew in her heart that the other party's real motive was to lure her here. Every move that he made previously was on purpose. Jian Fengqi harshly closed his eyes. This was a huge humiliation to him. He had never suffered such a loss in all his years of life. "You're really fast. If I find out who that person is, I definitely won't let him off." Chu Luiyue was also very curious about that person's identity, but the other party was one step ahead of her, so there was nothing she could do now. Since the other party spent so much effort to lure her here, wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't go in to take a look? Thinking of this, she turned around and left. Jian Fengqi was shocked. "Huh? Hey, you're going back now? Didn't you want to go in just now?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "I want to go in. Then it's easy to get into trouble if we go in now. Let's wait for the right time." After saying that, Chu Luiyue's figure quickly disappeared from sight. Jian Fengqi thought that it made sense. He glanced at the blue bell fragments on the ground with heartache and resentment, then turned around and followed Chu Luiyue. At the same time, everyone in the Imperial capital saw the military flag and realized that the city gate had been breached. In the palace, Emperor Jiawen, a few family heads, and other important people in the Imperial court were all gathered at Chengxian Hall. Everyone was originally discussing how to deal with the Northwest Army's attack, but the loud noise from outside finally silenced the noisy Chengxian Hall. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and their expressions froze on their faces. Sure enough, someone came to report. "Your Majesty, the city gate had been breached. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the Imperial capital." The Imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now, Rongjio actually took such a short time to bring people in. First, they broke through the city gate. Soon, they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Jiawen, and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Jiawen was furious. Useless. The number of Imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. "Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the Imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't." The crowd looked at each other. The Imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rongjio get his hands on it? Digression. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience for my Yuan. Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the Imperial city seem to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Jiawen froze on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning. "What do you mean?" That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the Imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Jiawen understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Jiawen's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me. One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the Imperial city were standing here. If Rongjio brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you? Were you? Or all of you? Emperor Jiawen didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Rongjio was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know it all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Jiawen suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Ci family didn't betray you. Ci stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Rongjio escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Rongjio had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Xiao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the Imperial study, Chu Xiao never came again. Today, he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the Emperor. Then, a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Rongjio. Not long ago, he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now, he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally, he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Jiawen fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Men, protect the Emperor. Chu Xiao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Rongju lightly say, Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members. Chu Xiao immediately shouted loudly, Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Rongjio, you're only digging your own grave by doing this. Oh, really? Rongjio raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the bloodstain on it. First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire Imperial city is under Ai's control, right? Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Rongjio and felt uneasy. Could it be that Rongjio will really win this time? At the side, Ci coldly said, Rongjio, you killed the Empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed. As he spoke, his body's force surged, and he planned to take action. Rongjio chuckled. I do hate the Empress, but the one who killed her is someone else. Ci was dazed. You're lying. His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the Empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the Empress. How could someone else do it? I've already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about? Rongjio looked at Ci sarcastically. You should ask Father about the truth of the matter. Ci was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion. So why wouldn't he admit to killing the Empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Ci stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen harshly said, Elder Yi. Where's Elder Yi? Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared. At this point, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zhong Yi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Jiawen thought of something. Deep Xian Formation. The Deep Xian Formation was country Yao Qin's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Xian Formation wasn't activated when Rongjiu and the rest barged in. Rongjiu said, "Oh, right. Oh, that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Xian Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that?" Emperor Jiawen felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Xiao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjiu said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Jiawen's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjiu. "Why you?" Rongjiu lifted his chin, and his expression was cold. "It seems like father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly." As he spoke, he raised his hand. "Someone come and send father to Qinghe Palace to rest." Emperor Jiawen immediately shouted, "How dare you? Rongjiu clearly wants to imprison me." He clenched his teeth. "Rongjiu, don't think that I can't do anything to you." Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up. In that direction is where Situ Xingchen is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura, someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it, and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face flushed red. "Let me go over." "Rongjiu, do you know what that is?" "Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it." The moment he finished his sentence, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled, and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar, it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjiu turned around to take a look, and he looked serious. "Wei Lin, immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on?" Yes, everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Jiawen suddenly turned around and rushed back. "I must be quick." But Rongjiu quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. "What are you all waiting for?" The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Jiawen again. This time, Emperor Jiawen's hands were tied up, and he couldn't move. "Rongjiu! Rongjiu!" Emperor Jiawen was furious, and his face flushed red. Rongjiu waved his hands. "Aren't you going to send father to rest?" A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Jiawen away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who serve him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Jiawen was still scolding Rongjiu. But when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point, it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Jiawen, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjiu didn't directly kill him, Emperor Jiawen's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjiu's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Si for a moment. Si's entire body tensed up. Even though the Si family was the head of the 4 major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjiu. "Si family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time." Si's heart sank. "Is Rongjiu planning to put me under house arrest?" "Third prince." Before Si could finish his sentence, Rongjiu nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, You're not the only one. Don't worry. As long as you take good care of Father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the C family. This was a blatant threat. Sia's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word, "Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness." Then he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Joan left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. It seems like Rongjio still has a grudge against the Empress. Besides, Siyu is the one who sent Rongjio to the execution ground. The C family situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Joan and Si had already been dealt with, Chu Xiao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now, Rongjio will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjio's gaze landed on him. Great Elder Chu. Chu Xiao shuddered as he looked at Rongjio fearfully. Third Highness, you're very loyal to Father. Why, aren't you going together? Chu Xiao's legs turned to jelly, and he immediately said, Your Highness, you're mistaken. Actually, just now. Rongjio's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat, and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white, and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze, he seemed to be a joke. Great Elder Chu, please. The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying, murderous intent, Chu Xiao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end, he could only leave with them. Then, the other people who previously stood on Emperor Zhaoen's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. Congratulations, Hong Long. Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjio took a deep breath in, turned around, and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjio asked, Where did that light pillar come from? Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace. Rongjio knitted his brows. Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there? Wei Lin paused before saying, Your Highness. Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it, and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times, but I didn't succeed. Rongjio was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior, and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillars shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhong Yi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the 2 of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country, Yao Chun, who can cause such commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The 2 of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Situ Xingqian is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then, he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed, someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhong Yi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Zhiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Situ Xingqian and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Situ Xingqian's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes, and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Situ Xingqian seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiwei and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rong Jiu led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rong Jiu and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth, until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. "What's that? It's so eerie." Chu Luiwei didn't have any expression on his face. "I'm still a step too late." "What?" Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. "Digression, trash computer, ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 448. Under the light, that person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiwei still recognized her. That person was Situ Xingqian. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiwei stared at Situ Xingqian's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on?" Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiwei with his elbow. "Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late?" Chu Luiwei didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Situ Xingqian, and it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after, she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. "This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell?" Chu Luiwei coldly said, "The bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this." Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Luiwei's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people. But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Qinquan bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiwei looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now, she had not been able to break it. Previously, she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Luiwei clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Luiwei's expression was amiss. "What's wrong with you?" Chu Luiwei shook her head. From what Emperor Zhou said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rong Jin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Zhou knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turn into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now, it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave. Suddenly, an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Liwei quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved, and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Liwei then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Jiawen. Behind him were eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rong Jiao's men. Emperor Jiawen had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars, as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed, so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Jiawen kept struggling, until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist, and hollered, "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Jiawen finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Liwei and Jian Fengqi and headed in a certain direction. Chu Liwei's eyes sparkled, and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Liwei glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want to, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead. So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Liwei's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Liwei had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Jiawen was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked, and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily, there weren't many people. Actually, Rong Jiao was still wary of Emperor Jiawen, but the entire Imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded, and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Situ Xingqian's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Liwei. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of two guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Liwei quickly entered the hall. Honk! Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Liwei turned around and saw that Situ Xingqian had actually become a Stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUA. Chapter 449. However, Situ Xingqian didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Liwei knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a Stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a Stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Situ Xingqian would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Liwei almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Jiawen heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Liwei immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Jiawen was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Liwei. He slowly walked to the window which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence, he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Jiawen was dazed as he softly muttered, Ryue, I've let you down in the end. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Ryue? Isn't this consort one back then? Rongxiu's birth mother? What does Emperor Jiawen mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Jiawen only doted on consort one back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after consort one gave birth to Rongxiu, she had a huge fight with Emperor Jiawen. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Jiawen can't forget her, but why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Jiawen removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Luiyue from his side, Chu Luiyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this? Emperor Jiawen muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hand suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Jiawen's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Jiawen's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Luiyue's pupil shrank. This was because Emperor Jiawen's aura was gradually becoming stronger. However, that power was clearly gushing out from his own body. A strange pattern suddenly appeared above his head. Chu Luiyue took a quick look and realized that the pattern was exactly the same as the pattern on the green-red light pillar outside. But in comparison, the one above Emperor Jiawen's head looked much more normal, unlike the one outside that was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Gotcha! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the pattern. Following the crack, Emperor Jiawen's aura became even stronger. Chu Luiyue finally realized something. There's a seal in Emperor Jiawen's body. Now, he seems to be planning to break that seal. It's obvious that Emperor Jiawen's abilities aren't as ordinary as they seem on the surface. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something, and his heart harshly skipped a beat. If the pattern that appeared above Emperor Jiawen's head was a seal, what about the one outside? Honglong, a snake-like bolt of lightning shuttled through the thick black clouds and finally struck the light pillar. Crackle. Following this ear-piercing sound, a crack appeared in the middle of the strange pattern on the pillar of light. But as the light pillar kept flashing and the pattern was pulled until it almost changed shape, almost nobody noticed this change. Most people's attention was on Situ Xingqian, who was in the middle of the light pillar. Rongxiu stared at her closely. Actually, he had already recognized that person as Situ Xingqian. It seems like she has been locked up in the palace previously, but for some reason, she suddenly started to break through. The aura on the light pillar is the same as the bronze cauldron. Your Highness, what should we do? The crowd behind him exchanged glances. Should we just let it go like this? But it seems like we can't go near to stop it. Rongxiu boomed, seal the gates. Be prepared to activate the Deep Shin formation at any time. Everyone was shocked. Your Highness, activating the Deep Shin formation requires a lot of manpower and resources. It seems a little overboard to deal with a Stage 4 warrior. One of the patriarchs asked tentatively. Rongxiu turned around and sneered. It seems like family head Su is willing to take the lead. That person's expression changed, and he hurriedly shook his head. What a joke. The aura on the light pillar is so dangerous. Even a Stage 5 warrior like Wei Lin can't do anything about it, let alone the others. Since no one wants to go, immediately go down and prepare the Deep Shin formation. Rongxiu hollered, and that person was shocked. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left. Very quickly, the people at the side also followed him. Rongxiu looked at Situ Xingqian again and suddenly thought of something. Where's Elder Yi now? At this point, Elder Yi was fighting with Elder Zhongyi again. After coming out, he planned to stop Situ Xingqian, but Elder Zhongyi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhongye's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence, after a few moves, the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingqian had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhongyi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhongyi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingqian had already successfully broken through from a Stage 3 warrior to a Stage 4 warrior. Not long later, she might even break through to a Stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingqian was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingqian was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression. There are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 450. Elder Zhongye's heart was beating like a drum. He was a rank 6 warrior and could naturally feel that something was wrong with the aura in the light pillar. Seeing Elder Yi in such a state, he became even more worried. However, since he had already said so earlier, it was naturally inappropriate for him to go back on his word. Thinking that Situ Xingqian always knew her limits, he felt more at ease and tried to defend himself. Outsiders like you don't need to worry about this. After saying that, he looked at the pillar of light. At this point, Situ Xingqian's aura had already broken through to the intermediate Stage 4 stage, and it was still growing stronger. Elder Zhongyi was half excited and half worried. However, he didn't notice that Elder Ye's eyes flashed with shock when he saw a crack appear on the pattern on the pillar of light. Situ Xingqian's breakthrough speed was faster than he expected. The power within the bronze cauldron was still gushing out. If this continued, things would only get more and more out of hand. Oh, right, and Emperor Jiaowen. Thinking of this, old man, he turned to leave. Elder Zhongye's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He once again stood in front of him and asked with extreme vigilance, "Where are you going?" Elder Ye's eyes darkened. "Zhongyi, I've already said that I won't stop Situ Xingqian. You better get out of the way now." However, Elder Zhongyi did not believe him at all. Who knew what tricks Yi Zhiding would come up with to deal with him and Xingqian? No matter what, you have to stay here. You can't go anywhere until it's over. Elder Zhongyi sneered. The two of us are evenly matched. Even if I can't take you down, it won't be that easy for you to leave either. Elder Yi was so angry that he almost cursed. He wanted to smash open Zhongye's brain to see if it was filled with water. Zhongyi, don't push your luck. Elder Zhongyi shrugged. It was clear that he wanted to fight him to the end. Unlike the chaotic palace, the Prince Li's mansion was completely quiet at this moment. Rongxiu stood in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed in the direction of the palace. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the pattern on it start to crack. Mo, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask, "Master, it seems like Situ Xingqian's ambition is greater than expected. She actually used such a short time to break through to this stage. His limbs were crippled, his origin power sealed, and all the humiliation he's suffered in the past few days. Anyone would have done the same. Not to mention her." Rongxiu smiled faintly. Mo thought the same. Situ Xingqian isn't a kind person. Judging from the recent events, this woman is clearly the kind of person who will do anything to achieve her goals. Not to mention that she didn't know the other secret hidden in the bronze cauldron. Even if she knew, she might still try her luck. "Third brother, what's your plan?" Rongxiu asked calmly. Mo immediately said, "Third Highness, prepare to activate the dark mysterious formation." But for some reason, there was no movement at all. "Third Imperial brother, when you are on the battlefield, you have always been particular about knowing the enemy and yourself, and you will never be defeated. Now, he probably doesn't know what Sidu Xingchen wants to do, so he's planning to wait and see. Naturally, he won't act rashly. Besides, he had just taken over the Imperial city and was only one step away from the throne. He would naturally be very careful. A smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Actually, Rong Xiu is very outstanding in all aspects. There's nothing wrong with this idea. However, he didn't know that time wouldn't wait for anyone. If he wanted to wait until he was fully prepared before taking action, it might already be too late. "Master, are you not planning to interfere?" asked Yuemo curiously. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes. "Why do I have to do something unnecessary? This way, it would save him a lot of trouble." Yuemo respectfully answered. A ripple suddenly appeared in the air. Yuemo turned around and saw Yin Qing, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, walking out. He looked like he had rushed back and was covered in dust. "Greetings, Master." Yin Qing knelt on one knee and presented a letter with both hands. Rong Xiu looked at the letter calmly. "Master, that side can't hold on for much longer. 36 respected elder Feng personally wrote a letter to ask you to go back as soon as possible." Hearing 36 respected elder Feng, Yumo's eyelids twitched. That person actually came out personally? It can be seen that the situation over there isn't optimistic. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Master hasn't gone back in such a long time. Rong Xiu picked up the letter. The moment it touched his fingertips, the letter instantly turned into a ray of light. It flew in front of Rong Xiu. Then, the ray of light turned into a circular light screen. A blurry silhouette appeared on top of it. "Your Highness, are you really not planning to come back?" A low and gentle voice came from within. It was like a gentle breeze that made one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Yuemo suddenly shivered as he exchanged glances with Yin Qing. They both saw the fear in each other's eyes. This person actually used such a voice to speak. "It's over." Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his lips still held a light smile. "Respected elder, you've misunderstood. I will go back in a few days." "That's good." The voice was still gentle and even had a hint of a smile. "That's good. Your Highness hasn't returned for a long time. Everyone thought that you died outside." Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched violently. Digression. There's another update later. Go to bed early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 451. Yuemo and Yin Qing both held their breaths and didn't dare to make sound. If they could, they really wanted to disappear from here right now. There weren't many people in the world who dared to be so rude to His Highness, and this person was one of them. However, he had never said such words in the past. It could be seen that he was furious this time. Rong Xiu coughed. "Respected elder, you're joking. It's good that your Highness knows." That voice sounded a little fierce, but Yin Qing and Yuemo both heaved a sigh of relief. In this case, they could at least muddle through, right? "I heard that your Highness stayed there for so long this time because of a woman?" Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly, and he glanced at Yin Qing from the corner of his eyes. Yin Qing opened her mouth. It wasn't Yin Qing who said it. That elder sneered. "It's just this old man's guess. However, it seems that I guessed it right." Rong Xiu paused for a moment and nodded lightly. "That's right." 36 respected Elder Ming was caught off guard by his frank admission. "Your Highness has never been close to women. Why did you suddenly become enlightened after going out?" The anger from before disappeared and was replaced by curiosity and ridicule. "I wonder what kind of woman can make your Highness like this. It seems that those old fellows still don't know about this." Rong Xiu said honestly. "Yes, I haven't returned yet, so it's not appropriate to make it public now. When I return, I will naturally mention this matter personally." These words made the elder in the light screen silent for a while. "Your Highness intends to give her a status?" Rong Xiu smiled. "She's Ai's wife. Naturally, she has to have a status." "What?" That elder was shocked and lost his voice. Even the originally blurry figure trembled. "Your Highness intends to, but she probably hasn't even entered Heaven's canopy before, right? How could those old fellows agree to a woman with such a background?" Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Didn't you agree just like that? This old man is... How can that group of people be compared to this old man? The old man said angrily. Is your highness looking down on this old man? Since that woman was chosen by your highness, this old man naturally trusts her. Moreover, the person who could make his highness put in so much effort must be someone that his highness had in mind. Why would this old man object? No wonder his highness took so long to come back. However, since you were prepared, why did you take so long? At the end of his sentence, the old man's tone was filled with disdain. Rong Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, I know what to do. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens over there, please take care of it for the time being. The old man smacked his lips twice. This old man has always been impatient with such things. This time, for the sake of his highness's marriage, I'll just agree. However, when his highness returns, this old man wants to be the first to see that woman. A glimmer flashed across Rong Xiu's deep eyes. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. This time, she won't be returning without what? She won't be coming back with you. The old man was shocked. He was already thinking of what gift to give her. Why did he say that she wouldn't be coming? Wait, don't tell me she hasn't taken a liking to you. Rong Xiu, Yin Xing, and Mo both shrunk their necks and wished they could find a hole to hide in. They really didn't want to hear this conversation at all. Rong Xiu took a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this. She'll be returning to Heaven's Canopy soon and has some matters to attend to. When she's done, you'll naturally have a chance to see her. The old man's interest was immediately piqued. She came to Heaven's Canopy, but didn't come with you? Then where did she go? What did she do? Rong Xiu refused to say more. You'll know all this when it's time. Seeing that Rong Xiu wasn't willing to reveal anything, the old man didn't continue asking. Since this is the case, I hope you'll return soon. After saying that, the light screen quickly dissipated. Rong Xiu lightly sighed. This time, it had indeed dragged on for too long. Even 36 respected Elder Ming personally wrote a letter. He thought for a moment and asked, What's the matter? What's Mu Qinghe up to today? Mo immediately said. Earlier, he went to Ms. Lu Yu's place and left. Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. At this time, Mu Qinghe went to find her. Where is he now? Mo was dazed, and his expression suddenly changed. According to the previous rules, the people sent to monitor Mu Qinghe had to report to him every once in a while. However, there didn't seem to be any news today. I've been by Rong Xiu's side and only cared about Rong Xiu's matters, so I actually forgot about this. Mo knelt down with a thud. I've neglected my duty. Master, please punish me. Rong Xiu had long realized something when he saw Mo's expression. He knitted his brows. No need. It seems like he left today. Mu Qinghe isn't a simple person. It's impossible for him not to know that someone is secretly monitoring him. There must be a reason why he took action today. Also, where's Yue? Asked Rong Xiu immediately. Mo's heart skipped a beat. Rong Xiu closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them and looked in a certain direction. That's where the palace is. She actually entered the palace. He looked at the light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. As time passed, the light pillar's color seemed to have faded a lot. However, Situ Xingqian's aura was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that many cracks had already appeared on the strange pattern on the light pillar. Rong Xiu's eyes darkened. The next moment, another bolt of lightning struck down. That pattern was finally completely torn apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 452. Rong Xiu's figure moved, and he rapidly disappeared from the yard. Mo and Yin Xing looked at each other and followed him. As the strange pattern cracked, Situ Xingqian officially broke through and became a Stage 5 warrior. Seeing that the light pillar didn't show any signs of disappearing and that Situ Xingqian, who was suspended in it, was still absorbing the surrounding heaven and earth force, Rong Xiu finally realized that something was amiss. If this continues, who knows if Situ Xingqian will continue to break through. He looked at Wei Lin. Have you found Elder Yi? Wei Lin shook his head. Rongjio pondered for a moment. Give the order to activate the Deep Xian formation. Upon hearing this, the crowd standing at the back looked at each other. Nobody expected Rongjio to use the Deep Xian formation, which Emperor Zhong didn't have the time to activate, to deal with Situ Xingqian. Yes, Wei Lin quickly left with the others. The waiting time was always very unbearable. After around 15 minutes, a ripple finally came from the northwest corner of the palace. A star gradually appeared in midair. Following that, more and more dots of light appeared around the starlight. In the blink of an eye, they connected together. It was like a small galaxy. Almost at the same time, the same scene was happening in the other three directions. All the light spots gathered in the middle. It was as if there was an invisible hand connecting the four pieces of starlight together. When everything gathered together, it finally made a loud sound. It was like a gigantic star net that covered the entire palace. A vast suppression descended. The greenish-red light pillar was also suppressed by this force and started to shrink toward the center. At this point, Situ Xingqian suddenly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes that were always filled with water were now filled with a scarlet red. Brutal and cold murderous intent crazily surged out from the depths of her eyes. She looked at her wrists and ankles. With the help of that force, all her physical injuries had healed, and her cultivation level had also directly broken through from a Stage 3 warrior to a Stage 5 warrior. She slowly clenched her fists and felt the abundant strength in her body. She was elated. Previously, she was still a little hesitant, but it now seemed like her decision was right. Not to mention country Yao, Chun, even in the entire world, how many people could break through to this level in such a short period of time? Most importantly, the energy in the bronze cauldron had not been completely exhausted. In other words, her strength would continue to rise. She raised her head and saw that the pillar of light seemed to be gradually shrinking. She smiled coldly. Then, she clasped her hands together and the force around her surged wildly. In an instant, the wind howled, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. The pillar of light that entered the clouds suddenly fell down like a waterfall. Those dazzling rays of light, along with an incomparably valiant power, madly surged into her body. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Situ Xingqian saw a few small wounds on her hand bursting open, and sticky, sweet blood slowly seeped out. However, she gritted her teeth and did not stop. Only in this way would he be able to break through faster. As long as she could endure this pain, she would become a top expert in the world. Very quickly, Rongjio and the rest saw the light pillar, which seemed to connect heaven and earth, rapidly decrease in size. Situ Xingqian's body was like a black hole as it crazily swallowed the light. The uneasiness in Rongjio's heart intensified. He hollered, "Deep Xian formation, activate." His low and powerful voice reverberated far and wide. Instantly, all the cultivators in the palace exerted their strength. Rays of light intersected on the gigantic Deep Xian formation. Very quickly, they outlined a gigantic figure. Roar! A dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. It was actually a 7th grade fiend, red-tailed flood dragon. Its entire body was silver, and only its tail was red like a burning flame. Its body was huge, and it almost covered the entire sky. When the dragon's roar sounded, even the ground seemed to move. The Deep Xian formation was a protective formation around the palace. But very few people knew that this Xian formation was actually suppressing a red-tailed flood dragon. And it was the most formidable part of the Deep Xian formation. Even though the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th grade fiend, it had the bloodline of an ancient legendary fiend, the Great Phoenix Dragon. The red-tailed flood dragon could be considered the strongest existence among the 7th grade fiends. Rumors had it that some red-tailed flood dragons had the chance to break through to 8th grade or even higher. The red-tailed flood dragon hovered in midair, and its gigantic red eyes were icy cold. It was indifferent. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I didn't expect a fiend of such a grade to be hidden under the deep Xian formation. Even though I'm already a stage 5 warrior, it's still a little wishful thinking for me to deal with a 7th grade fiend. Unless I can break through to the peak of a stage 6 warrior, I'll only have a sliver of hope. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, circulated her energy, and rapidly set up a barrier around her. The next moment, the red-tailed flood dragon rapidly charged towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, black cracks appeared in the air. This showed how strong the suppression around it was. Then, the dragon's tail harshly swung out. Pack! It heavily hit the barrier in front of Situ Xingqian. Boom! A loud collision sound was heard. A suppressive force directly passed through the barrier and crushed Situ Xingqian's body. Her body trembled, and her face instantly turned much paler. But the next moment, elation flashed across her eyes. That's because the barrier didn't break. With my current stage 5 warrior strength, the barrier I set up definitely won't be able to block the red-tailed flood dragon's attack. Hence, I directly used the light pillar's energy to form this barrier. It's indeed very strong. Situ Xingqian was slightly relieved and continued to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force. As long as I have a little more time, I might be the red-tailed flood dragon's opponent. Seeing that Situ Xingqian actually withstood the red-tailed flood dragon's attack, the spectators below were shocked. What's with the greenish-red glow on her body? It actually contains such a strong force. In such a short time, she already broke through to become a stage 5 warrior. No, she's actually already an intermediate stage 5 warrior. Is she going to break through to become a stage 6 warrior? Did you see that? She seems to be bleeding. Her physical body probably can't take it anymore. What exactly is she planning to do? Not only in the palace, but everyone in the entire Imperial city had already seen the commotion. They all looked up at the scene. Situ Xingqian ignored all the gazes. Something seemed to be moving in her chest, and blood kept seeping out of her body. However, she couldn't feel any pain and only felt that she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Suddenly, her gaze focused, and she looked somewhere. She waved her sleeves. A powerful wave of energy swept out. Chu Luiwei, who was hiding in Qinghe Hall, felt the commotion behind him, and alarms went off in his heart. He turned around. A vast suppression came toward him. Digression. I slept at 5 p.m. Woo 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 woo. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Luiwei immediately backed away. Pack! The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Luiwei at an even faster speed. Emperor Jiawen, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Jiawen's eyes. Chu Luiwei paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then, her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Jiawen's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Luiwei's heart sank. Emperor Jiawen's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Luiwei suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Luiwei's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Luiwei immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. Chu! The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Luiwei could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Luiwei in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now, she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*TCH. Every time Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Luiyue pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingqian's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Ha! Chu Luiyue's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. The moment he saw Chu Luiyue appear in the air, Yi Lao was shocked and wanted to rush over to help. That girl is still a stage 3 warrior. How can she be Situ Xingqian's match? But as soon as he moved, Elder Zhong Yi blocked his path again. Elder Zhong Yi, who had suffered a lot previously and was very aggrieved, finally vented his anger. Yi Zhiding, didn't you say that your precious disciple is a rare genius? Why are you in such a hurry to help? Why don't we take a good look at the two of them and see who will win? Yi Zhiding finally couldn't hold it in and scolded. Pfft, who does that Situ Xingqian think she is? How can she be compared to my disciple? Do you think that the humiliation at the Qing Jiao competition wasn't enough? Zhong Yi, don't be smug too early. Situ Xingqian activated the bronze cauldron on her own accord and swallowed the strength of hundreds of cultivators. Even if she can break through in a short period of time, there will be endless trouble in the future. Zhong Yi's heart skipped a beat. No wonder I felt that Situ Xingqian's aura was a little off. But it's such a crucial moment. How can I boost someone else's morale and destroy my own? You don't have to worry about this. You'd better think about whether or not your precious disciple can survive this time. From what I see, Xingqian's move can directly take away half of her life. She's just a stage 3 warrior. Perhaps she can't even last 3 moves against Xingqian. Yi Zhiding's expression was extremely cold as he stared at Elder Zhong Yi with deadly eyes and said word by word, I only have this one disciple in my entire life. If anyone dares to hurt her, I won't rest until I'm dead. As his voice fell, the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding is actually serious about this. The next moment, Elder Yi had already rushed toward him. The two of them instantly engaged in a fight. Rong Jiu stared at the scene in midair, and his expression didn't look too good. Just now, Chu Luiyue seemed to have come out of Qinghe Hall. The crowd behind him fell silent. Rong Jiu turned around and walked toward Qinghe Hall with big strides. Previously, he had clearly sent quite a few people to escort Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall, but Chu Luiyue was actually there as well. If it weren't for Situ Xingqian's sudden attack, he didn't know when he would find out about this. Just as Chu Luiyue's body was about to land heavily on the ground, she suddenly felt a force pulling her from behind. Chu Luiyue turned around and realized that it was Dumpling biting the corner of her shirt. She pulled her back. Voila! The soft material couldn't withstand such a pull, and it suddenly tore apart. Panic flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I land on her, I'll be seriously injured. The piercing aura was like a steel knife as it quickly scraped across Chu Luiyue's body. She focused her gaze and saw that the white marble floor was rapidly approaching. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment, she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Shue Shue. Chu Luiyue looked at Shue Shue, who suddenly appeared and saved her. In surprise, Shue Shue's forehoof stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiwei up. Roar! A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiwei, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular, snow-white lion. The wind blew, and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance, she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xingqian were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xingqian, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Luiwei? Chu Luiwei lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xingqian in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xingqian was taken aback by Chu Luiwei's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear? Chu Luiwei is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Luiwei. Situ Xingqian suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rongxiu's fiend. Rongxiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now, it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Luiwei. Is it trying to help Chu Luiwei to the end? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. Why? Do you want to fight with me? Chu Luiwei circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xingqian did not care about Chu Luiwei's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Luiwei's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xingqian almost thought that Chu Luiwei had gone crazy. Okay, today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. Piak. This time, she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Luiwei. Shui quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast, and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xingqian's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Luiwei, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Luiwei. Ha! Shui's figure flashed, and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xingqian refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xingqian angrily shouted, What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts. Before Chu Luiwei could reply, Shui had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. Whoosh! The blood whip was torn apart by Shui's claws. Situ Xingqian gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined. Shui glanced at Situ Xingqian. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Luiwei lightly patted Shui's head. Well done. Shui turned around, and the frost in its eyes disappeared, replaced by unconcealed arrogance and delight. That huge, furry head intimately rubbed against Chu Luiwei's palm a few times. It was completely different from its previous cold and dignified appearance. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She was also affected by the counterattack just now. Her internal organs felt like they were squeezed into a ball. She originally wanted to take the chance to take revenge and get rid of Chu Luiyue completely, but it seemed like it would be a little difficult now. Unless my cultivation level could increase again. Yes, I can only kill Chu Luiyue if I continue to cultivate and become an even stronger warrior. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and strengthened the barrier around her. Then, she closed her eyes and continued to absorb the surrounding power. Actually, the power contained in the greenish-red light from the bronze cauldron kept flowing into her body. As long as she focused at the most crucial moment and tried to break through, she would succeed. Chu Luiyue saw Situ Xingqian suddenly stop. He thought about it and understood her intentions. How can it be such a good thing in the world? Fighting whenever she wants and stopping to break through whenever she wants? Just as Chu Luiyue thought of this, a red figure flashed across his eyes. Dumpling actually flew directly toward Situ Xingqian. At this point, if Chu Luiyue was in front, he would see Dumpling puffing up her cheeks in anger. Damn it, my limelight has been stolen. Once Dumpling thought of how it tried to pull Chu Luiyue back but failed and was even swept away by that power, it was furious and embarrassed. Compared to the White Lion's performance, it had no face at all. Upon seeing Dumpling rushing toward her, Situ Xingqian's lips curled up into a cold smile. This barrier's defensive power is very strong, and even the 7th-grade red-tailed flood dragon might not be able to break it, let alone this 3rd-grade blood ferret. It does have some capabilities, but with a bang, Dumpling directly pounced on the barrier and harshly bit down on it. Gotcha! A gigantic hole instantly appeared. Situ Xingqian's smile froze, and disbelief filled her eyes. How is this possible? As if venting its anger, Dumpling harshly bit to the side. Gotcha, gotcha! A similar scene appeared in the Qin Jiao competition again. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but be shocked. Why does Dumpling's teeth seem to be better than before? Even though the barrier around Situ Xingqian was thick, it couldn't stop Dumpling from creating such a barrier. At first, she wanted to ignore this matter and quickly break through. However, when she saw Dumpling biting a hole and stuffing itself into it, she finally couldn't take it anymore and was forced to stop. Chu Luiyue, if you're really capable, fight one-on-one with me. F***CK. These fiends are nothing. Chu Luiyue blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something, and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Luiyue suddenly shouted, Shue Xingqian, Shue Shue. Shue Shue seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Luiyue actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Luiyue might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Luiyue will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, one green and one red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then, she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 455. That ray of light shone in her eyes, and it was dazzling beyond compare. However, this ray of light was nothing compared to the gigantic greenish-red palm print that Situ Xingqian executed in midair. Everyone's gaze was focused on the palm print that contained a strong suppression. Chu Luiyue looked up and squinted her eyes slightly. There seemed to be a strange pattern in the middle of the palm print, and it was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the pattern that appeared on the light pillar previously. Chu Yue's heart skipped a beat. That pattern was clearly a seal, but for some reason, it appeared on the palm print again. Suddenly, she felt a movement coming from the cosmic bag. It was the wooden box that she snatched from Situ Xingqian previously. That strange pattern seemed to contain a special power. Every time it appeared, it would cause a huge reaction from the wooden box. At this moment, Situ Xingqian hollered, "Go!" That palm print slowly moved toward Chu Luiyue. A strong suppression was continuously emitted from it. The surrounding space seemed to be greatly suppressed as it became heavy and stagnant. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that she was in a swamp, and every move she made required a lot of effort. Situ Xingqian's power has definitely reached the peak of Stage 5. Chu Luiyue is probably in danger. She actually rushed forward. It's definitely too late for her to escape now. I really don't know what she's thinking. The crowd discussed fervently. Chu Luiyue, who was in midair, didn't hear them. But even if she could hear them, she wouldn't care. Since she dared to do this, she naturally has her reasons. That gigantic palm print seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Chu Luiyue. In comparison, Chu Luiyue looked exceptionally thin and petite, as if she would be swallowed by that palm print at any moment. But at this moment, Chu Luiyue finally stretched out her right hand and lightly tapped forward with her index finger. Jingxian finger. Buzz. A ripple suddenly appeared in midair. Then, the faint glow on his fingertip suddenly shone brightly. Half of the sky above Chu Yue's head seemed to have lit up. That light was grand, brilliant, and majestic. It was as if it could generously and gently encompass everything in the world. Under the illumination of this light, the strange pattern on the palm print suddenly appeared extremely ugly. The power of both sides intertwined. Like snow meeting sunlight, the palm print actually began to quietly and quickly melt away. The smug smile on Situ Xingqian's face suddenly froze, and fear crept in her eyes. How could this be? How could this be? She had used all of her strength in this attack. But why was he defeated so quickly after Chu Luiyue made his move? From the looks of it, there was no room for a counterattack. Situ Xingqian kept circulating the energy in her body and channeling it into the palm print, but it was to no avail. She looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief and resentment. One finger. Chu Luiyue actually used one finger to defeat me. Actually, Chu Luiyue was just as shocked as Situ Xingqian. This was the first time she had officially executed Jingxian finger after learning it. She knew that Jingxian finger was very powerful, but she didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was clearly stronger than same-grade warrior techniques. Chu Luiyue looked at his finger. That grand and brilliant light contained immense power. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she probably wouldn't have believed this scene. Could this be the strength of a heaven-grade warrior technique? Situ Xingqian finally panicked. If I continue fighting with Chu Luiyue, I definitely won't be able to gain any advantage. The only thing I can do now is to quickly increase my abilities. Boom! That gigantic palm print finally disappeared completely. Even that strange pattern disappeared once again. Blood seeped out of the corner of Situ Xingqian's mouth. Together with her originally blood-stained body, she looked even more pathetic. The next moment, she suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly and patted Xue Xue lightly. Xue Xue immediately understood and rushed forward. Its speed was naturally faster than Situ Xingqian's, and it blocked her path in no time. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had caught up so quickly, Situ Xingqian's face turned a little ugly. Eldest Princess Situ, we haven't decided who the winner is, yet you're running away just like that? Isn't it a little inappropriate? Asked Chu Luiyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. She could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at her from below. Mockery, and disdain. They're all here for me. Who said that I'm running away? Situ Xingqian forced herself to shout, and her voice was much sharper than before. You just use some unorthodox methods. Chu Luiyue, do you really think that you're my match? Chu Luiyue laughed. Unorthodox methods. Those words should be returned to Situ Xingqian. You'll know whether I'm your match or not very soon. Chu Luiyue smiled, but a tinge of murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The next moment, she jumped up and went straight for Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian was shocked at first, but she then sneered in her heart. Chu Luiyue actually wants to have a physical fight with me. This is the stupidest choice I've made today. The two of us are 2 whole stages apart, and Chu Luiyue's physical strength can't be compared to mine. If Chu Luiyue continues to use the previous move, I might not be able to withstand it. But now, I'm clearly courting death. You're courting death. Situ Xingqian circulated the force in her body and stretched out her hand. Flying eagle claw. A few afterimages mixed together. They all went for Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then, she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. Gotcha! The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Situ Xingqian cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment, there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Luiyue's wrist so strong? Situ Xingqian instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue was even faster. Bang! The two people's legs harshly collided. Situ Xingqian felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes full of resentment. "UB asterisk T6." Chu Luiyue's lips curved up, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's heart. Situ Xingqian was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. Chu! That dagger pierced in her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Luiyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate. 2 thin flying daggers instantly entered Situ Xingqian's body. Digression. I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m., please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 456. Too cold, piercing sensations instantly spread throughout her body. Situ Xingqian's face turned pale, and she slowly lowered her head to take a look. Blood slowly seeped out from the front of her shirt. Choo-choo. 2 flying daggers pierced through her chest and flew out. Chu Luiyue bent his arm and harshly hit her shoulder with his elbow. Situ Xingqian violently spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Chu Luiyue hurriedly dodged and jumped onto Shue's back, which happened to rush over. Bang! Situ Xingqian landed heavily on the ground. As the force of the impact was too strong, her body dragged on the ground for a long time before finally stopping. A long trail of blood was left on the ground, and it looked ghastly. There was dead silence in the sky. Almost everyone thought that Chu Luiyue was dead for sure, but they didn't expect Situ Xingqian to be the one who lost after the two of them had an intense fight. Even though the fiend's appearance couldn't go unnoticed, Chu Luiyue did personally knock Situ Xingqian down just now. Elder Yi and Elder Zhong Yi, who were in the midst of a chaotic fight, finally stopped when they saw this scene. However, the two of them had very different expressions. Elder Yi's worries instantly disappeared, and the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. His eyes were filled with unconcealable delight. I've long said that Situ Xingqian doesn't have the right to be compared to Lu Yu. Zhong Yi, what else do you have to say now? Elder Zhong Yi's face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Situ Xingqian's cultivation level is clearly much higher than Chu Luiyue's. How could she lose? I originally thought that I would definitely win this match. Yet, it ended up like this. His eyes flickered, and he immediately wanted to go forward. Sigh. Zhong Yi, what are you planning to do? Old Man Yi moved and stood in front of Elder Zhong Yi, his face full of smiles. Zhong Yi's face darkened. You want to stop me? Look at what you're saying. Didn't you also stop me just now? We're the same. Huh. Looking at Zhong Ye's ugly face, Elder Yi only felt proud and elated. Just now, I wanted to help Lu Yu, but this fellow stopped me. Now, I want to help Situ Xingqian. How can it be so easy? Elder Zhong Yi frowned. With Yi jeeting around, he couldn't spare any time to help at all. Didn't you say earlier that you wanted to see who would win in the end? Then, why don't we watch it together? Elder Ye's face was full of smiles, but the biting cold aura around him made it clear that he absolutely would not let Elder Zhong Yi pass. Elder Zhong Ye's heart was filled with hatred. While the two of them were talking, Xue had already swooped down with Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue easily leaped and landed on the ground. Situ Xingqian struggled to stand up. However, the wounds on his body were still bleeding. The pain on her shoulder and back was intense. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one? Chu Luiyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. As you wish. It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Luiyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. You, what do you want to do? Situ Xingqian yelled fiercely. I am Country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. Eldest Princess Situ, of course I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right? Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Luiyue really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. You seem to have forgotten what you just did. Chu Luiyue lifted his chin, and his gaze swept across her entire body. Who do you think will speak up for you now? After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Qin's palace, neither Emperor Zhaowen nor Rongjiu would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Situ Yin couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The Kurmi might not even be Chu Luiyue's match. Besides, Chu Luiyue has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Luiyue thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now, that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar, they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the Qinkuan bag. Dong dong. This time, the sound was even clearer. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Then, she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment, she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Luiyue stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Yue's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly, her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Luiyue quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment, the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 457. A blinding red light instantly exploded from the parchment and completely surrounded Situ Xingqian. Then, countless tiny cracks instantly appeared on Situ Xingqian's body. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, Situ Xingqian fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Her mind was blank, and she only felt pain and itchiness all over her body. It was as if thousands of ants were crazily biting her. Situ Xingqian almost instinctively scratched her body. Not only did she tear her clothes, but she even used her delicately manicured nails to leave streaks of blood on her skin. When her neck was scratched out of shape, she finally reached her hand to her face. Then, she scratched it harshly without hesitation. A few streaks of blood instantly covered half of her face. Her originally pretty face was ruined in an instant. It became ugly and scary. Ah! Situ Xingqian screamed hysterically. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Luiyue knitted his brows tightly. Situ Xingqian's body is clearly being taken over. Also, the person who wants to take over her body has a very high cultivation level. That's why her physical body couldn't withstand the terrifying suppression, and her skin and flesh were torn apart. It's no wonder I couldn't break the barrier on the parchment no matter what. It turns out that there's another cultivator's soul hidden inside. Situ Xingqian's body gradually stopped twitching. The moment the red light on her body disappeared, she slowly stood up and looked up at Chu Luiyue. That's a completely different pair of eyes. Unfamiliar, cold, and ruthless. Alarm bells rang in Chu Luiyue's heart, and he immediately retreated. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian raised her hand. Chu Luiyue only felt a strong suction force enveloping his entire body, and his entire body uncontrollably fell forward. Roar! Shui roared angrily and jumped over. Situ Xingqian's gaze turned and coldly glanced at it. A huge blood-red barrier instantly appeared, blocking Shui outside. Bang! Shui slammed heavily into the barrier. However, the barrier wasn't damaged at all. Many ways to escape flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind, but she quickly realized that the force in her body was being suppressed by the other party's suppression. Under this terrifying suppression, her body almost couldn't move. The next moment, Situ Xingqian suddenly grabbed her neck. Chu Luiyue's neck tightened. Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue from above, and her lips curled into a cold smile. I really have to thank you. Even though it was the same face and voice, Chu Luiyue knew that this wasn't the real Situ Xingqian when she saw the pair of eyes. Without you, Shui and Situ Shui in it. Chu Luiyue's neck was strangled, and her entire body was suspended in the air. As the hand kept tightening, Chu Luiyue's face gradually flushed red, and her chest felt so stifled that it was about to explode. Why you? Chu Luiyue wanted to say something, but she could only spit out a few words. She tried to pry Situ Xingqian's hand away, but she only felt sticky and sweet blood. Situ Xingqian watched her struggle as if she was watching a joke. Her eyes were filled with disdain and contempt. Crack! Another crisp sound was heard. Situ Xingqian looked up. Dumpling had already rushed to the barrier she had set up and tried to bite an opening. But this time, it only left clear teeth marks on the surface. How can the barrier I personally set up be broken so easily? Her tone was light, but it was filled with unconcealed arrogance. Chu Luiyue was even more certain that this person had already taken over Situ Xingqian. Even if the real Situ Xingqian isn't dead, she's not far from it. Tuan Zi's face was full of resentment. She didn't believe it and bit down again. Crack! It was the same as before. Situ Xingqian seemed to be impatient as she turned her gaze and looked at Xue Xue. She then revealed a meaningful smile. This fiend is quite capable, but it's a pity that it's not yours. This sentence was naturally directed at Chu Luiyue. But at this point, Chu Yue's face was flushed red, and she was almost suffocating. She couldn't even say a single word. Situ Xingqian admired it for a while in satisfaction before slowly saying, I originally intended to kill you. I didn't plan to kill you, but since you've destroyed this body, don't blame me for being merciless. Chu Luiyue suddenly raised her hand, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. The dagger instantly stabbed toward Situ Xingqian's wrist. But Situ Xingqian seemed to have expected it, as she quickly reached out with her other hand and directly clamped Chu Luiyue's wrist. She harshly twisted it. Kacha! Excruciating pain attacked her. Chu Luiyue's vision turned black for a moment. It's just an eye for an eye. Situ Xingqian sneered, and her eyes were filled with intense, murderous intent. The moment the bones in her hand broke, the dagger also landed in Situ Xingqian's hand. She held the dagger and pressed it against Chu Luiyue's face. The cold touch made Chu Luiyue's heart tremble. Your face is quite... HM? This dagger. As Situ Xingqian spoke, her gaze suddenly landed on the dagger, and her eyes changed. Chu Luiyue wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but he vaguely saw a tinge of shock and fear on her face. Now is the time. Chu Luiyue gathered all the strength in his body, hugged Situ Xingqian's wrist with both hands, and harshly twisted it. At the same time that she instinctively let go of her hand, she kicked her leg out. With the help of the rebound force, Chu Luiyue finally broke free from Situ Xingqian's grip and jumped back. But this time, Situ Xingqian didn't immediately chase after him. Instead, she looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. Where did this dagger come from? Her tone was very anxious, and there seemed to be a tinge of fear in it. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows. The person who asked this question wasn't the real Situ Xingqian, but the person who took over her body. However, there doesn't seem to be anything special about this dagger. So why did she have such a reaction? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't react, Situ Xingqian became even more anxious and took a step forward. Hurry up and say it. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. This dagger was given to me by Rong Xiu back then. Also, if I didn't remember wrongly, he seemed to have personally polished it. This should be the only one in the world, and other people shouldn't be able to recognize it. This person's reaction is really too strange. What if I don't want to say it? Chu Luiyue asked word by word. Situ Xingqian chuckled. You don't want to say it, right? I naturally have my ways to make you say it clearly. The moment she said that, she quickly crossed her hands in front of her, and the force around her crazily surged. A ball of white flame quickly burned in front of her. Then, the flame split into two and completely surrounded Chu Luiyue. Her figure was instantly surrounded by the scorching flame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 458. The fire burned fiercely. It was as if it was going to burn everything to ashes. Lu Yu, Elder Yi couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Elder Zhong Yi, who had been fighting for a long time, finally found a chance and punched Elder Ye's chest. Elder Ye's body trembled, and he only stabilized himself after taking a few steps back. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Elder Zhong Yi looked at the burning fire. Chu Yue's figure had almost disappeared. Oomph. Yi Zhiding, it seems like your precious disciple is going to die this time. Elder Yi clenched his fists and looked at Elder Zhong Yi as if he was looking an idiot. Zhong Yi, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you tell that Situ Xingqian's body has long been possessed? That woke him up from his dream. Upon hearing the word possessed, Elder Zhong Ye's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly looked at Situ Xingqian. He didn't notice it previously, but now that he looked at it again, he felt that everything was strange. He and Yi Zhiding were locked in a fight, so he didn't notice Situ Xingqian and Chu Liuyue's situation. He only vaguely remembered that Situ Xingqian seemed to have gone through a shocking change, and her abilities suddenly increased by a lot. Previously, he thought that Situ Xingqian had become stronger because she had absorbed more energy. But now that he took a closer look, he realized that her aura seemed to be completely different from before. Every cultivator's aura was different. The current Situ Xingqian did seem to have become another person. Elder Yi wanted to twist Zhong Ye's head off and see what kind of trash was inside. As a stage 6 warrior, he didn't even notice this. But now, he only cared about Chu Liyue. Elder Yi finally shook Elder Zhong Yi off while he was in a daze and went straight for Chu Liyue. At the same time, Jian Fengqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene and squinted his eyes. His attention was mostly on Situ Xingqian at this point. A soul that can possess a body is at least a stage 7 warrior when they were alive. Country Yao Chan may seem ordinary, but there are many secrets hidden in it. From the looks of it, Mu Qinghe had left a little too early and missed out on so many exciting shows. His gaze landed on the fire, and he raised his eyebrows. Although he felt that Chu Liyue, Situ Xingqian's assess. Situ Xingqian, and Situ Xingqian 2's to Situ. If anything were to happen, Mu Qinghe would definitely find trouble with him. Thinking of this, Jian Fengqi gently turned his palm in his sleeves, and light flashed beneath his feet. Just as he was about to rush up, he suddenly felt a biting, cold aura flash past him from the side. He immediately became alert and turned his head to look in that direction. A black-robed figure quickly disappeared before his eyes. To Situ to him, where? Suddenly, he was shocked in his heart. This aura seems to be... Why are they here? Jian Fengqi moved. He had a strong urge to chase after Situ Xingqian. Just as he was about to follow Situ Xingqian caught sight of the fire again. Situ Xingqian stopped, turned, and walked toward Chu Liyue. Shihan paused. He heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that Jian Fengqi didn't follow him. He had been secretly following Chu Liyue the whole time. The most important mission of the 13 U-Guard was to protect Her Highness. Now that Her Highness had reunited with Her Highness and the rest of the 13 U-Guard wasn't around, he took on this responsibility again. He was good at hiding. That was why he hadn't been discovered after following Situ Xingqian for so long. But when he saw that Her Highness was in danger, he was worried and accidentally leaked his aura, which was detected by Jian Fengqi. Fortunately, Situ Xingqian didn't follow Situ Xingqian. Shihan was relieved. He looked at the white fire again and frowned. Her Highness is still a stage 3 warrior. Even though she's stronger than she looks, she's still lacking compared to before. Situ Xingqian's body has been taken over, and her combat power is above that of a stage 6 warrior. Her Highness shouldn't be able to handle it alone. Shihan wanted to rush forward, but many people were watching. Once he did, he would be noticed. If he wasn't careful, he would suspect Her Highness's identity. Shihan thought for a while. He finally decided to take action when he saw the fire burning more fiercely. No matter what, I have to save Her Highness first. But the moment he took a step forward, he heard a low and calm voice behind him. She can solve this problem by herself. Shihan immediately turned around. A tall and slender figure came into view. His gaze froze when he saw the person's face. Prince Li, Rongxiu. If you go out now, you'll bring her a lot of trouble. Don't you know? Rongxiu was wearing a snow-colored brocade shirt and a black cloak. He had one hand behind his back, and he stood tall. His thin lips curved up slightly, and he had a faint smile on his face, making him look gentle and graceful. But his eyes and brows had a suppressive aura that couldn't be ignored, making one subconsciously submit to him. Shihan stared at Rongxiu without saying a word. He actually didn't know when Rongxiu appeared behind him. Now that the two of them were confronting each other, he actually felt a faint threat from Rongxiu. That was the suppressive aura that only the strong had. From this, it was enough to tell that Rongxiu's skills were definitely above his. The air between the two of them seemed to have frozen, and it was stiff and stagnant. Rongxiu wasn't worried that Shihan would see through his skills. During this period, Chihan had also been probing around Princely Mansion, so he must have realized that something was amiss. If the 13U guards didn't even have this bit of ability, they didn't need to exist. They would only be a burden to her if they stayed by her side. Just as Chihan was hesitating on how to deal with this, a loud sound was suddenly heard. He immediately turned around to look. His pupils shrank. He saw a red flame suddenly rushing out from the burning white flame. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. With that ball of flame as the center, violent energy crazily swept out in all directions. The road paved with white jade was instantly smashed to smithereens and sent flying everywhere. The crimson flames covered the sky and engulfed the white flames with ease. It was almost a one-sided suppression. A slender and straight figure gradually became clear. Countless pairs of eyes stared at that figure. She walked out slowly, her black hair and clothes fluttering. Her eyes were piercingly cold. She was like the god of death who had walked out from the flames of hell. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. That was Chu Luwe. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 459. Her entire body was burning with scarlet flames. Reflected in her eyes, it became a flickering flame. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step she took felt like she was stepping on the crowd's hearts. Jian Fengqi and Elder Yi, who originally wanted to rush over to help her, subconsciously stopped. Chihan clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to control the waves in his heart. Her Highness is indeed her Highness. Even if she's at a disadvantage, she can still survive. How many people in this world can do this? He could not help but turn around to look at Rongxiu, but he did not see any shock on Rongxiu's face. Instead, Rongxiu had a faint smile, as if he had already expected all of this. This princely seems to be even more mysterious and powerful than I expected. Situ Xingqian's cold and fierce eyes suddenly cracked, revealing a tinge of shock and panic. For some reason, she felt a strong threat from Chu Luwe. He's just a stage 3 warrior. Where did this suppression and aura come from? Chu Luwe finally stood still and looked up at Situ Xingqian. She then raised her hand. A ball of crimson flame suddenly condensed in her palm. A terrifying pressure slowly spread out from the fireball. Situ Xingqian felt increasingly uneasy, and her throat became extremely dry. Chu Luwe stared at her, and his lips suddenly curled up into a smile, but it was extremely cold. She enunciated every word clearly. I hate it when people snatch my things. It was so in the past, and it's even more so now. Situ Xingqian's heart suddenly sank, and she instinctively retreated. Chu Luwe remained standing at his original spot, and he quickly waved his arm. Go! The fist-sized fireball immediately flew toward Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, a deep rut would appear on the ground. Situ Xingqian was fast, but it was even faster. The crowd only saw a fireball flying across the sky. The next moment, the fireball had already rushed in front of Situ Xingqian. Unable to avoid it, Situ Xingqian simply stopped and clenched her teeth. In the end, Chu Luwe was only a stage 3 warrior. How strong could he be? She didn't believe that she couldn't even take a blow from Chu Luwe. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian rapidly gathered the force in her body, transformed it into a sickle-like blood-colored light blade, and flew forward. Chi! The blood-red light blade instantly split the fireball into two. Situ Xingqian snorted. That's all. Before she could finish speaking, her expression suddenly froze. Chu Luwe's smile deepened. Originally, I wanted to do it myself. I didn't expect you to take the initiative. You saved me a lot of effort. Other than Situ Xingqian, nobody else could see that there was a transparent flame hidden in the middle of the red fireball. Chu Luwe fused the two powers and delivered a fatal blow. The moment Situ Xingqian saw the transparent fire, she widened her eyes in shock. That was whoosh. Two balls of flames swept over. Before Situ Xingqian could move, she felt an intense burning pain in her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw that there was a bloody hole the size of a fist in her lower abdomen. Although it was a bloody hole, no blood actually flowed out. Due to the flame's terrifyingly high temperature, the skin and flesh around the wound were instantly charred, and the entire wound looked terrifying. However, the most important thing was that the pearl of essence was in her abdomen. When her abdomen was pierced, the pearl of essence inside was completely shattered. Situ Xingqian looked at the wound on her body and was dazed for a long time. It wasn't until she felt the origin power in her body begin to disperse uncontrollably that she finally came to her senses. You destroyed this physical body. She suddenly looked up, and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was the chance that I waited for with much difficulty. It hadn't even been a quarter of an hour since she had successfully taken over this body. Chu Luiyue smiled. This physical body isn't worthy of you. You don't have to thank me. Situ Xingqian was about to go crazy. She had waited for so many years and put in so much effort, but in the end, it was so easily destroyed by Chu Luiyue. You are courting death. Situ Xingqian let out a sharp roar filled with hatred. However, her pearl of essence was already shattered, and she couldn't gather force with this body. The more she wanted to recover, the worse the situation was. It was as if the more she wanted to hold onto the sand in her hands, the faster it would flow away. She tried many times, but her pearl of essence was already destroyed, and it couldn't be recovered. Faced with Situ Xingqian's overwhelming murderous intent, Chu Luiyue didn't care at all and looked relaxed. Every time you possess a body, you'll use up a lot of force and might even damage yourself. I think you can't possess a second body now, right? Asked Chu Luiyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her face turned white. This was because Chu Luiyue was speaking the truth. Under such circumstances, it would be a fool's dream to possess Chu Luiyue's body again and kill her. Her expression changed, and ruthlessness flashed across her eyes. Bang! Situ Xingqian's body suddenly exploded. Xingqian, Elder Zhong Ye's face turned white in an instant. He looked at this scene in disbelief and felt that the world was spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Situ Xingqian had been at Minghua Tianshan for many years, and he had always doted on her and even treated her as his own. Now that he suddenly saw this scene, it was undoubtedly a huge blow to him. His eyes instantly turned red, and he hated Chu Luiyue to the core. Chu Luiyue, give me your life. Without waiting for him to rush over, Elder Yi blocked him once again. Elder Zhong, Yi was about to go crazy. Yi Zhiding. Chu Luiyue killed Xingqian, and this debt isn't over. Elder Yi was so angry that he laughed. Situ Xingqian already died when she was possessed. If you want to blame someone, you should blame the person who possessed her. Why are you blaming my disciple? If they did it, they would admit it. If they didn't do it, they definitely wouldn't take the blame. The reason why Situ Xingqian was possessed was clearly because she crazily swallowed the bronze cauldron's energy until she summoned that spiritual body. She just reaped what she sowed. If she knew this would happen, why did she do it back then? Elder Zhong Ye's face turned red and white, and the veins on his forehead and neck popped up as if he was on the verge of breaking down. However, he couldn't say anything to rebut him. This was because he knew deep down that Yi Zhiding was right. However, it was impossible for him to admit it just like that. This is all because of Chu Luiyue. If it weren't for her, Xingqian definitely wouldn't have ended up like this. As he spoke, he directly shouted at Chu Luiyue angrily. Chu Luiyue, a life for a life. I, Zhong Yi, and the entire Xing Luo won't let you off. However, Chu Luiyue didn't even look at him. After Situ Xingqian's physical body exploded, she saw a blood-red ray of light quickly darting out. This person is actually planning to escape. Digression. There are 2 more updates later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 460. Qi. That ball of red shot into the air and tore a hole in the deep Xian array. The red-tailed flood dragon let out an angry roar. but that ball of red pierced through its tail. Crash! The huge, deep Xian array was completely broken. It turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. It looked like that thing was about to escape. Chu Liyue's heart tightened. Just as she was about to chase after it, a silver sword suddenly pierced through the air. The sound of the sword was like thunder. When it entered her ears, it seemed to reach straight to her heart. Chu Liyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. She saw that the sword drew a bright arc in the air and quickly pierced toward that ball of red light. Clang! The sword pierced the ground and directly nailed that thing to death. Chu Liyue's eyes flashed. A normal sword could not possibly nail a spirit body, especially one that was rather powerful. It was obvious that the pressure from the long sword was suppressing him. She was very familiar with the aura on it. She looked in the direction of the sword and instantly met a pair of deep eyes. Her heart suddenly felt like it had been hit by something soft. It was indeed him. However, this feeling did not last long, because she immediately realized that the person standing beside Rongxiu was Qi Han. These two people were actually together. Chu Liyue's heart instantly skipped a few beats. Rongxiu and Qi Han. What do they say? Do they know each other's identities? Rongxiu was easy to deal with, but what about Qi Han? Rongxiu was very resourceful. If he really wanted to know something, Chu Liyue was full of doubts. The atmosphere between Rongxiu and Qi Han became tense again. Why did you suddenly attack? Qi Han suddenly turned around and questioned in a deep voice. Just now, it was Rongxiu who said that Her Highness could handle everything by herself. That was why he suppressed the worry in his heart and did not rush forward. But in the blink of an eye, Rongxiu was caught off guard and attacked. Rongxiu glanced at Qi Han and smiled faintly. Because this prince is her fiancé. So calm and collected. So self-righteous. Qi Han's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. You did it on purpose. In that case, Rongxiu naturally became the first person to help His Highness. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. This prince is only thinking for you, His tone was light, as if he didn't think of anything else. Qi Han did not speak for a long time. Rongxiu's words made sense. Now that Her Highness had not yet returned to the Tianling dynasty. If Her Highness's plan failed because of him, then he could only apologize with his death. But Rongxiu was obviously selfish. There won't be a next time, Qi Han said coldly. Rongxiu's eyebrows moved slightly, and his smile deepened. You is my fiancé, so this is what I should do. Qi Han clenched his fists. If he didn't know that Her Highness really liked Prince Li, he would definitely have attacked by now. He really didn't know what Her Highness saw in him. Seeing that Qi Han and Rongxiu seemed to be talking about something, Chu Liyue was even more curious. However, she was quite a distance away from them, so she couldn't hear anything at all. She made up her mind to clean up the mess here as soon as possible and then find the two of them to clarify things. Thinking of this, she walked to the side of the long sword and surrounded the soul with flames. A cry of agony could be heard instantly. Chu Liyue glanced at the small fireball and was surprised to find that the person's aura was rapidly weakening. The hellfire of the heavenly square cauldron can burn everything in the world, especially this soul. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly echoed in her heart. As long as it is condensed in the heavenly square cauldron, it will disappear completely very soon. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly. Really? Then aren't you also? The legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body was destroyed, and now only a soul was left. However, it had also stayed in here for thousands of years, hadn't it? How can such a lowly person be compared to my race? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was filled with undisguised pride. Chu Liyue thought that it made sense. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle was a divine beast, so ordinary cultivators naturally couldn't compare. Although this cultivator seemed to have some background, you want his power? From the scream just now, she could already tell that this seemed to be a middle-aged man. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before finally admitting. That's right. The power in his soul can help me recover my cultivation. Chu Liyue chuckled lightly. He was quite honest. Ever since she discussed with the legendary three-eyed eagle to help it last time, the relationship between them was not as tense as before. In her opinion, it was a good thing. With a thought, she called the fireball back in her body and threw the soul into the heavenly square cauldron. The moment that scarlet ball appeared, endless transparent karmic fire surged up. It completely drowned it. Ah, the cries of pain became even more mournful, but they soon became weaker. Chu Liwei said in her heart, "Let's keep him alive first. She might be able to get something out of him later." Whether it was the bronze cauldron, the sheepskin scroll, or his reaction when he saw the dagger that Rongxiu gave her. Chu Liwei pulled out the long sword. Suddenly, her shoulders sank. It was Tuanzi who rushed over. Chu Liwei smiled and patted its head. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xue was still hesitating on the spot. Its eyes would occasionally drift to the long sword in her hand. Xue, thank you for today." Chu Liwei roughly knew what it was thinking, so she couldn't help but smile and walk over. Xue then leaned in front of her. Its gaze swept across her wrist, and it revealed a tinge of heartache as it went closer and gently licked it. Chu Liui's heart warmed up. "It's just a flesh wound. I'll be fine after some rest." Hong Long. A sudden clap of thunder came from the dark clouds. In the direction of Qinghe Hall, a figure shot up to the sky. Chu Liwei focused her gaze and was instantly stunned. That person is actually Emperor Jiawen. The key is that he seems to be breaking through to peak stage 6. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 461. Vigorous origin power surged around his body, and the seal above his head had almost completely disappeared. Chu Liwei previously knew that Emperor Jiawen wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. The current him has actually reached the peak of stage 6, but he hasn't stopped. A ridiculous guess suddenly surfaced in Chu Liui's mind. If the seal completely disappears and Emperor Jiawen's abilities break through again, as if to prove my guess, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into Emperor Jiawen's body as the last stroke on the seal gradually disappeared. The aura on his body was still constantly strengthening. If Chu Liwei was already like this, what about the other people who didn't know anything? When Emperor Jiawen's figure appeared in midair and revealed his true cultivation level, almost everyone was stunned. That's His Majesty? It really is His Majesty. Wasn't he escorted to Qinghe Hall previously? Why is he Stage 6 warrior? His Majesty is actually a Stage 6 warrior? The crowd discussed fervently, and the last sentence finally woke them up. The few family heads standing at one side exchanged glances and fell into an eerie silence. This happened too suddenly, and it was too horrifying. Everyone in country Yao Chen knew that Emperor Jiawen's cultivation talent could barely be considered not bad. Compared to a real genius, wasn't worth mentioning. In addition to the many years of living like a prince, one didn't need to think to know that Emperor Jiawen's combat skills were very weak. Even just a moment ago, the patriarchs were thinking the same thing. If not, Emperor Jiawen wouldn't have lost so quickly when Rongxiu barged in, and he wouldn't have been in such a pathetic state. But now, it seemed like the rich strength and formidable suppression clearly came from Emperor Jiawen's body. This meant that he was different from Situ Xingqian, who kept absorbing strength to break through. He was clearly hiding his true strength. But now, he was finally able to display his true strength. Someone suddenly asked, "What's the third prince's matter? Where's the third prince?" The crowd was suddenly jolted awake. Rongxiu just went to find Emperor Jiawen. Who would have thought that things would take a 180-degree turn in such a short period of time? Rongxiu was clearly at a disadvantage now. Even if he had outstanding battle achievements, he was definitely not a match for a rank 6 warrior. In actual fact, Rongxiu was in a better state than the crowd had imagined, as he was only slightly injured. When he arrived outside Qinghe Hall, he coincidentally saw Emperor Jiawen cultivating. Just as he was about to enter Emperor Jiawen rushed up to the sky and didn't even care about him. That minor injury was only caused by the shock waves of energy. However, the shock in his heart was 10,000 times heavier than that. He looked up at Emperor Jiawen, whose abilities kept increasing, and tightly knitted his brows as many emotions flashed across his eyes. Shock, doubt, disbelief. After a while, he suddenly laughed. Wei Lin, who was following closely behind, immediately asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Rongjio shook his head and laughed even louder, but there was no smile in his eyes. So this was his Imperial father. It turned out that what he had seen all these years was just an illusion. He thought that he knew a lot about his father, but in the end, he realized that he knew nothing at all. That man had become a completely different person. No, or rather, he was originally like that. After Emperor Jiawen appeared, the red-tailed flood dragon seemed to become even more anxious and uneasy. It seemed like it wanted to go forward, but it was always hesitant as it looked at Emperor Jiawen with a complicated gaze. Chu Liwei glanced at it, patted Shui, and softly asked, "Why? Why do I feel that the red-tailed flood dragon seems to hate Emperor Jiawen? But at the same time, it's a little fearful?" Shui rubbed its head against Chu Liu's palm and softly whimpered to express its affirmation. Dumpling nodded even more crazily. "It's so obvious. The red-tailed flood dragon clearly wants to get rid of Emperor Jiawen completely, but for some reason, it didn't do anything." Chu Liuwei was even more confused. This deep Xian formation is country Yao Chen's palace's defensive formation, and the red-tailed flood dragon is suppressed under it. Logically speaking, it should be on the same side as country Yao Chen's royal family. Where did this inexplicable disgust and hatred come from? It can't be because it supported Rongjio's ascension. That has nothing to do with it. At this point, the seal above Emperor Jiawen's head completely disappeared. Emperor Jiawen's violent aura surged. Dark clouds gathered, and thunder rumbled. The wind howled. This is the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Liuwei held his breath. Emperor Jiawen is actually going to directly break through and become a Stage 7 warrior? Hong long. Following this loud sound, a silver ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. The dark sky was much brighter because of this ray of light. Then, a second ray of light and a third ray of light appeared. It was as if there was a silver waterfall falling from the clouds. A gigantic canopy emitted a dazzling light. A vast suppression descended. Some people couldn't take it anymore and knelt down as they watched this scene agitatedly. Chu Liuwei slowly clenched his fists, and he almost couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Emperor Jiawen actually summoned Heaven's Canopy. This is the sign that he's about to break through and become a Stage 7 warrior. But looking at Emperor Jiawen's expression, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had long expected all of this. Under countless gazes, Emperor Jiawen slowly raised his hand and reached for Heaven's Canopy. "Hold on." A low and lazy voice suddenly sounded. "Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 462. Emperor Jiawen suddenly paused in his actions, and he abruptly turned around. A tall figure appeared in front of the crowd. He slowly walked over with a casual smile on his devilish face. His eyes were as deep and pure as the night sky, and he was surrounded by an indescribable aura as if he didn't belong to this world. It was Rongjio. Chu Liuwei widened her eyes slightly. This was because the aura on Rongjio's body became stronger with every step he took. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd gasped in shock. "See, that's Prince Li? Isn't Prince Li weak and sick all year round? Now he actually broke through to become a Stage 3 warrior. No, he's a Stage 4 warrior now." In the face of this sudden change, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. But Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat. Is Rongjio planning to show his true abilities? "Why you?" Emperor Jiawen stared closely at Rongjio, and his face changed a few times. "You're not sick?" But Rongjio didn't immediately answer his question. Instead, he walked straight to Chu Liuwei and stood still. He looked down, held her hand, and gently slid his fingers across her broken wrist. A warm and strong force instantly entered her body. Your Highness, actually, you don't have to worry about. Chu Luiwei originally wanted to say that he didn't have to worry about this injury, since she was a celestial physician herself. She had already treated it briefly before, and it would heal on its own after some time. But when she met Rongxiu's deep and gentle gaze, her heart warmed, and she swallowed her words. Sorry, I'm late. Chu Luiwei lightly shook her head. Chi Han, who was hiding in the dark, looked even colder. Leave the rest to me. Upon hearing Rongxiu's words, Chu Luiwei felt a little uneasy. What are you planning to do? He had painstakingly hidden it for so many years, so why did he have to reveal it all today? Rongxiu's thin lips curved slightly. I'm just putting an end to it. Chu Luiwei's heart tingled as he instinctively looked up at Emperor Jiawen, who was in midair. A moment later, she gently held his hand. All right, while the two of them were talking, Rongxiu's aura had already broken through to a stage 5 warrior. After confirming that Chu Luiwei was fine, Rongxiu turned around to look at Emperor Jiawen. At this point, if Emperor Jiawen still couldn't tell what was going on, he would have wasted his many years on the throne. Rongxiu, you were lying to me all this time? Not only was he not sick, but his cultivation was also extremely outstanding. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have reached this level at his current age. No, Rongxiu did not seem to have stopped. He was about to break through the middle stage of the 5th stage. Rongxiu smiled lightly. I'm just learning from you, father. Haven't you been like this for so many years? Emperor Jiawen was dazed. Then, he suddenly realized something as shock flashed across his eyes. Why, you already knew. Rongxiu smiled and didn't say anything, clearly admitting to it. Emperor Jiawen was instantly flustered, and his aura was messy. Even the heaven's canopy in front of him became a little illusory. Since when? Whilst you know. Emperor Jiawen's face had a rare look of panic and nervousness. Chu Luiwei squinted his eyes. She had never seen such an expression on Emperor Jiawen's face before. It was as if a secret that had been hidden for many years had suddenly been discovered. It was reasonable for him to be shocked. When the surrounding people saw the current Rongxiu, they also had the same reaction. But where did this nervousness and panic come from? Mother has already passed away for many years. Father, you really don't have to be so worried. Rongxiu's tone was calm, as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Emperor Jiawen felt as if he was struck by lightning. Rongxiu must have known everything. The anger from being lied to previously suddenly disappeared, and guilt and hatred rapidly surged in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Rongxiu, what happened back then wasn't what you think it was. I had my reasons back then. It seemed like he wanted to explain himself. However, Rongxiu wasn't interested in listening. He still smiled gently and lazily, but his eyes seemed to be frozen with a thick layer of ice. The past is the past. If you say this now, Mother won't be able to hear it. As for me, I'm just here today to fulfill Mother's last wish. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the item hanging around Emperor Jiawen's neck, and he smiled meaningfully. You still used this item in the end, didn't you? Emperor Jiawen's face quickly darkened. He seemed to have instantly aged by more than 10 years. No, I was forced to. He clenched his fists, and his face was filled with conflict and pain. First, it was the Empress, then it was Rongxiu. Everyone is betraying me. If I don't retaliate, I'll be completely trapped in this palace. My years of hard work will go to waste. How can I accept this? If these people didn't force me to this step, why would I do this? Slight mockery flashed across Rongxiu's face. Some people are always the best at finding excuses for themselves. Emperor Jiawen suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, What did you just say? You just said that you want to help her fulfill her last wish. What is it? If I can help, I'll definitely do my best. Father, are you serious? Rongxiu raised his brows as if he were wavering. Emperor Jiawen harshly nodded. I'm the one who let her down. I can make it up to her. Mother said that she doesn't want to see you step into heaven's canopy, especially with her power. Rongshio's gaze was cold as he said every word clearly. She wants you to stay here forever, and you can't leave even if you die. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 463. The blood on Emperor Jiawen's face instantly drained, and he was as pale as a sheet. He opened his mouth and seemed to have used up all his strength to ask, "What's the matter? She really said that? She really hates me to the core. I'll do my best to fulfill Mother's dying wish," said Rongshio lightly. The conversation between the two of them caused everyone present to be confused. Back then, Emperor Jiawen doted on Consort One a lot, but it seemed like Consort One had a deep hatred for Emperor Jiawen. Everything about Heaven's Canopy was even more mystifying. Why is this Consort One's last wish? A thought suddenly surfaced in Chu Liuyue's mind. Could it be that Rongshio's birth mother is someone from Heaven's Canopy? This is the only way to explain why Rongshio has such outstanding talent and abilities, as well as the previous battle outside Heaven's Canopy. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed, and he seemed to make up his mind in the end as he said solemnly, "Rongshio, I've let your mother down, but there's nothing I can do about it. Originally, I didn't plan to go to Heaven's Canopy, but I have to go now." Heaven's Canopy was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he could successfully enter. That was a completely different world. After Consort One's death, he was filled with regret. He even hid his abilities and did nothing for so many years. Originally, he had wanted to live the rest of his life peacefully, but now, as long as he took a step forward, everything would be different. The scales in his heart had already tilted to one side. However, Rongshio was unmoved and smiled faintly. "It's fine if you want to go as long as you return that item to me." Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. "You want to snatch this item away? It originally belonged to Mother. How can you say that I snatched it away?" Slight mockery flashed across Rongshio's eyes. Besides, Mother never agreed to leave this item to me. Back then, he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this item. Rather than saying that he had snatched it, it was more likely that he had snatched it from his mother. After being exposed by Rongshio, Emperor Jiawen was very embarrassed, and he flew into a rage. "Rongshio, over the years, we have never mistreated you. Is this how you treat me?" He had thought that Rongshio was born with a weak body. He had even spent a long time looking for a celestial physician to treat him. In the end, it was just a scam. Rongshio's eyebrows moved slightly, and he suddenly laughed. "Imperial Father, if you knew about this earlier, would you still treat me like this?" Emperor Jiawen suddenly choked, and his face flushed red, but he couldn't say a single word. Rongshio's expression became even more sarcastic. If Emperor Jiawen knew that there was nothing wrong with his body and that he was very talented, he would have done something to him long ago. How could there be such a day? The so-called good was built on the basis that Rongshio wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he always said how much he loved his mother, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most in the end, and even caused her to die of depression? To Rongshio, Emperor Jiawen's words were a joke. Seeing Rongshio's penetrating gaze, Emperor Jiawen swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the emotions on his face disappeared, and only coldness was left. "If you want to stop me, we'll have to see if you have the ability." Then, he started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force again. The seal had already disappeared, and all the energy in his body had already flowed out. As long as he broke through the last stage 7 warrior barrier, he could successfully enter Heaven's Canopy. Rongshio raised his hand. Buzz! The sound of a sword rang. The silver longsword that was previously stabbed into the ground quickly flew over and landed in his hands. He crossed his legs and tightly held the sword with both hands as he stared closely at Emperor Jiawen. Sword up, sword down. An incomparably tyrannical sword chi swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew up into the air. Then, they silently turned into powder in the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Jiawen saw Rongshio attack, he already felt that something was amiss. When he saw the sword aura coming straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Rongshio's abilities have actually reached that of a stage 6 warrior. When a cultivator was breaking through, they usually needed to focus. The higher their cultivation level, the more so. Emperor Jiawen originally wanted to set up a barrier to block all attacks. But once Rongshio attacked, he knew that he couldn't do it. Helplessly, he could only temporarily stop and turn around to receive Rongshio's attack. Mountain and river fall. A blue origin power gushed out from his palm. Then it was the second and third force. The force that surged out was like a stream that quickly merged together and became a raging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of the water flowing. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The sharp sword aura immediately arrived. The two forces harshly clashed against each other. In an instant, the sword aura entered the river, and water splashed everywhere. Emperor Jiawen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But the next moment, he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle. It completely split into two. Emperor Jiawen's expression froze. The sword aura's attack didn't seem to weaken at all. The force contained in the sword aura was even stronger than expected. Then, the sword aura went against the flow. The strong aura made Emperor Jiawen's entire body tense up. Voila! His force was completely pierced through. That sword aura went straight for his face. He went on his toes and rapidly retreated. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a biting, cold wind coming from behind him. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. He hurriedly looked over and realized that the one attacking him was actually the red-tailed flood dragon. Roar! When the red-tailed flood dragon didn't hit its target, it became even more irritable. Half of the sky reverberated with its low and forceful roar. The spectators on the ground were also affected by the strong suppression, and their expressions changed. Those who weren't strong enough even directly vomited blood. However, that suppression didn't land on Chu Luiyue. There seemed to be an invisible barrier that blocked the red-tailed flood dragon suppression. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and blinked. So many people were affected, but why wasn't she affected? Then, her gaze landed on Shui Shui. I'm a legendary fiend. What's a mere red-tailed flood dragon to me? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue was enlightened. She had forgotten about this. The legendary three-eyed eagle was in my Dantian. Even though outsiders didn't know about it, fiends were very sensitive to such things. That red-tailed flood dragon is the fiend guarding country Yao Chen's palace. Why would it attack Emperor Jiawen? Chu Luiyue softly muttered. Just as she was secretly confused, that sword aura had already landed on Emperor Jiawen. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience for my Yue. Chapter 464. Emperor Jiawen originally wanted to avoid it, but the sword aura was too fast. Chu! The cold aura brushed past his neck. Kacha! The item hanging on his neck suddenly broke. It flew toward Rongshio. Emperor Jiawen was shocked and immediately reached out to snatch it, but he still missed it by a hair's breadth. Just as he was about to chase after it, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. It swung its tail and slapped Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen was caught off guard, and his back was harshly hit. His body flew out uncontrollably. At this point, that item had already landed in Rongshio's hands. Chu Luiyue focused on it, and saw that it was actually a black bone necklace with a ring hanging on it. The ring was bronze in color, and there seemed to be mysterious black patterns carved on it, making it look very mysterious. Rongshio looked down at the ring, and his long black eyelashes covered his eyes. He pressed his thin lips against each other, and his jade-like chin seemed to tense up for a moment. His face didn't reveal any expression, but Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly ached. Rongshio, return the item to me. Emperor Jiawen forcefully stabilized his body and hurriedly looked at Rongshio. Rongshio's expression changed slightly as he flipped his wrist and kept the ring. If Mother was still around, she definitely wouldn't agree to let me return the item to you. Emperor Jiawen originally wanted to argue, but he couldn't say anything when he met Rong Xiu's deep and penetrating eyes. It was as if every word he said would cause him to be mocked even more deeply. Just as he was feeling very conflicted, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. The man and the fiend were in a fight. Emperor Zhaowen's current strength was at the peak of Stage 6, and the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend. Logically speaking, they should be able to fight to a draw. But very quickly, Emperor Zhaowen was at a disadvantage, and he kept retreating. More importantly, the force in his body seemed to be continuously spreading in all directions, and his aura gradually weakened. Not long after, his level actually dropped by a stage. But this was only the beginning. As time passed, the red-tailed flood dragon left more and more wounds on his body. In the end, Emperor Zhaowen couldn't retaliate at all. His realm had even fallen below that of a rank 4 warrior. Bang! Emperor Zhaowen finally couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground harshly. In an instant, dust flew everywhere. He clutched his chest and coughed violently a few times. His mouth was full of blood, and he was on the verge of death. Rong Xiu did not seem to be interested in these things. He turned around and walked towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue could not help but ask in a low voice, "That red-tailed flood dragon seems to have a grudge against his majesty?" Rong Xiu smiled faintly and said carelessly, "That's right. It once received Mother's grace." So that was the case. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Then, he carefully sized up Rong Xiu and sighed in his heart. I never asked Rong Xiu why he purposely pretended to be sick. Previously, I always thought that he did it for the throne, but I didn't expect him to do it for the person sitting on the throne. He schemed for so many years just to deal with Emperor Zhaowen. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly felt a gaze coming from the side. She turned around to look. Rong Xiu looked at Rong Xiu with a complicated expression. He was not stupid. After so many things had happened, he had more or less guessed it. "Seventh brother, I have something to talk to you about in private. I wonder if you have time now?" Rong Xiu lightly smiled and nodded. "Okay." Outside Taihe Palace, Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi were talking. "Minter, don't worry. These are all small injuries. They'll heal after some time." Chu Luiyue looked at Elder Yi in front of him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Ever since Rong Xiu and Rong Jiu entered Taihe Palace to discuss, Elder Yi kept asking her questions, afraid that there was something wrong with her body. "Didn't you already take my pulse? Don't you even trust yourself?" Elder Yi coughed. "I'm just worried about you." Thinking about everything that happened previously, he still felt a little scared. If it weren't for my disciple being outstanding and strong enough, it would have been really dangerous. Chu Luiyue decisively changed the topic. "Elder Zong, Yi has already left?" Elder Yi sneered. "Sidu Xingqian is already dead. Why is he still here? If he continues, he'll be the next to die." Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. "Elder Zong, Yi seems to be a very vengeful person. What happened today? That fellow has always been like this. However, he doesn't dare to leak this news to Mingyue Tianshan. If not, even he will have to bear the consequences. Even though Zong Yi is a Stage 6 warrior, he doesn't dare to mess around." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Elder Zong Yi has a very good relationship with Situ Xingqian. If not, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to save her personally. Now that he personally saw Situ Xingqian die in front of him, she felt that he wouldn't take it lying down. Also, Country Xing Luo's Situ Xingqian is the eldest princess after all. Situ Yin dotes on his daughter a lot. In his anger, he might do something. Elder Yi waved his hand. "Don't worry. Situ Yin won't dare to mess around." Situ Xingqian swallowed the energy in the bronze cauldron to increase her abilities and even tried to kill you. She was in the wrong first. Furthermore, she was taken over later on. At that moment, she was already dead. In the end, she reaped what she sowed. Everyone could see it clearly. How could Situ Yin still have the face to mention this? No matter how much he likes Situ Xingqian, he can't give up the entire country Xing Luo for her. Hence, in the end, everything can only be reduced to nothing. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and looked at the tightly locked door. I wonder how their discussion went. Emperor Joan had already been locked up, and the red-tailed flood dragon was suppressed in the deep Xian formation again. The mess from before was more or less cleaned up by now. On the surface, everything seemed to be gradually returning to normal. But everyone knew that the outcome was still in the hands of the two of them. Elder Yi followed his line of sight and let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after so many years, it's still. Chu Luiwe suddenly asked, Emperor Joan, Master, did you already know that His Majesty? Elder Yi hesitated for a moment, nodded, and then shook his head. I only knew that His Majesty and Ryue had a falling out back then because he did something wrong to her, but I didn't know why he did it. Who can he blame for ending up in this state? Chu Luiwe thought for a while and asked, Did Emperor Jiawen come from country Xingluo? Consort Wan came from Heaven's Canopy? Elder Yi paused for a moment and smiled bitterly. I'm not sure about this. His Majesty met her by chance when he went out. He only said that she was the orphan of a fallen family, but nobody knows the details. Back then, she was doted on, and quite a few people secretly investigated her background, but they didn't find anything. Chu Luiwe nodded in understanding. If that was the case, it would make sense. Creak. Taiha Palace's door suddenly opened. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 465. Chu Luiwe and Elder Yi looked up at the same time. Not far behind the two of them, the various family heads were all quiet as they looked over. A figure walked out of it. Within a night, country Yaochun had a shocking change. First, Rong Jiu rebelled, occupied the Imperial city, and forced the emperor to abdicate. Then, country Xing Luo's eldest princess, Situ Xingchen, swallowed a strange force and continuously broke through. She tried to kill Chu Luiwe, but she was eventually killed. Finally, Prince Li, Rong Xiu, fought with Emperor Jiawen to take back his birth mother, concubine Wan, and won with one strike. Too many things happened on this day, and they quickly spread throughout the entire Imperial city. Nobody thought of keeping the news a secret. In fact, with such a big commotion, it was simply impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. Besides, the fight for the throne had huge implications. All the family heads personally saw everything that happened, so they would definitely tell their family members so that they would know how to deal with the situation. At that moment, everyone in the Imperial city was talking about this. Very quickly, the latest news came. The third prince, Rong Jiu, ascended the throne, and Prince Li, Rong Xiu, chose to return to Minghui Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, he was sent to Chengyi Palace to live out his remaining years as the Emperor Emeritus. Everyone had different opinions about this result. After all, everyone already knew that Rong Xiu wasn't really sick. On the contrary, he was very talented in cultivation, and he was very capable. Previously, many people guessed that he and Rong Jiu would fight for the throne. They didn't expect him to return to Minghui Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, what kind of ending would he have after being forcefully chased down from the throne? However, after Situ Xingchen died, country Xingluo didn't have any reaction, as if they had directly ignored it. Princely Mansion, Bamboo Forest. Chu Luiwe and Rong Xiu sat opposite each other with a half-finished chessboard in between them. The wind blew, and the bamboo leaves rustled. Rong Xiu put down the chess piece in his hand. Do you think that I'm too unreasonable? Chu Luiwe looked up and asked in shock. Your Highness, why do you say that? Rong Xiu paused for a while. Chu Luiwe suddenly understood. Is he talking about Emperor Jiawen? Your Highness naturally has your own difficulties and reasons for doing so. Chu Luiwe shook his head gently. As long as your Highness thinks it's right, then it's right. Rong Xiu's thin lips slightly raised. He suddenly leaned closer, fixed his eyes on her, and asked jokingly, Yours meaning is that no matter what this prince does, you will stand by this prince's side? His voice was low and lazy, and there was a careless smile at the corner of his mouth. Of course. Chu Luiwe looked into his deep eyes and said firmly. Her expression was so serious and sincere. Rong Xiu's heart seemed to be hit by something, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Your Highness is mine. I will naturally protect your Highness. Chu Luiyue smiled, and her eyes curved as if she was joking. However, the gaze in her eyes was firm and unquestionable. Rongxiu knew that she meant what she said. He kept quiet for a while and suddenly said, "Actually, this isn't quite accurate." Why? Chu Luiyue was dazed. Rongxiu's long fingers lightly tapped on the chessboard, as if he was smiling. "I'm not considered your man yet." His voice was exceptionally low, and his last syllable was slightly dragged out. When it landed in her ears, it was as if something was lightly scratching her heart. Chu Luiyue suddenly reacted and couldn't help but curse in her heart. "Demon, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Your Highness, I'm going to the Tianling dynasty now, and you're also going back to Mingyue Tianshan. I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other for a while." Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. "It seems like you're in a hurry." Chu Luiyue said faintly, "You can't be in a hurry. You've already prepared everything for the wedding." At this point, Rongxiu felt a little regretful. "I've indeed planned to get married long ago, but too many things happened in between. I didn't expect it to be delayed until now." Now, both of them had things to do, so they definitely wouldn't be able to get married in time. Seeing that Rongxiu seemed to be really disappointed, Chu Yue's heart skipped a beat. In any case, there's an engagement. It doesn't make much of a difference whether we get married earlier or later, right? Rongxiu looked at her meaningfully and smiled faintly. "Of course there's a difference. I've been waiting for too long." A trace of doubt flashed across Chu Yue's heart. It had only been a few months since they first met. Why did Rongxiu sound like he had been waiting for a long time? But as long as it's you, I can keep waiting. Sensing Rongxiu's deep and gentle gaze, Chu Luiyue sighed softly. Actually, the road ahead was full of dangers and difficulties. She didn't know when she would see him again. "Your Highness, are you really going back to Mingyue Tianshan? The matters in the Imperial capital have already been settled. There's no need to continue staying. Then let's get married when I return from the Tianling dynasty. How about it?" Rongxiu's expression turned serious. After a moment, he bent down and kissed Chu Luiyue's forehead. "Okay." His voice was light, but it contained too much. Patience, tolerance, waiting, love, and trust. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and thought for a long time. Finally, she seemed to have made up her mind. "Your Highness, I have something to tell you." Rongxiu nodded and pretended to listen. Chu Yue's lips were tightly pursed. She looked into Rongxiu's eyes and said word by word, "I'm going to the Tianling dynasty this time. The date of my return is not set. My enemy is there." Digression. Kavinka is dead. 4 updates today. 6 updates tomorrow. A happy 520 on mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 466. The blood drained from Emperor Jiawen's face, and he turned extremely pale. He opened his mouth and seemed to use all the strength in his body to ask, "Did she really say that? She really hated him to the core. Did she really say that? I will naturally do my best to fulfill my mother's request before she died," Rongxiu said indifferently. The conversation between the two of them left almost everyone at the scene confused. Emperor Jia, when had doted on concubine, won a lot in the past. He had doted on her a lot. But now, it seemed that concubine Wan hated Emperor Jia Wan deeply. Furthermore, everything about the Sky Screen realm was even more confusing. Why was this concubine Wan's last wish? Chu Luiyue suddenly had a guess. Could it be that Rongxiu's birth mother was someone for the Sky Screen realm? That was the only explanation for Rongxiu's outstanding talent and strength, as well as the battle outside the Sky Screen realm. Emperor Jia Wen's expression changed several times. Finally, he seemed to have made up his mind. He said in a low voice, "Rongxiu, I have let your mother down. However, since things have come to this, there is nothing I can do. Originally, I had no intention of going to the Sky Screen realm. However, I have no choice but to go now." The Sky Screen realm was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he would be able to enter it successfully. That was a completely different world. After concubine Wan's death, he had been filled with regret. He had even hidden his strength from then on, doing nothing for so many years. Originally, he had thought of living a peaceful life. However, if he took a step forward now, everything would be different. The balance in his heart had already tilted to one side. Rongxiu was unmoved. He only smiled faintly. "It's fine if you want to go, as long as you return that thing to me." Emperor Jia, Wen's expression changed. "You want to snatch that thing away? That thing originally belonged to my mother. How can you say that you want to snatch it away?" A hint of mockery flashed across Rongxiu's eyes. Furthermore, his mother had never agreed to leave this thing to him. Back then, he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this thing. Rather than snatching it away, he had snatched it from his mother. Having been exposed by Rongxiu, Emperor Jia was extremely embarrassed. In the end, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Rongxiu, for so many years, I have never treated you unfairly. Is this how you treat me?" He had thought that Rongxiu was born with a weak body, and he had been distressed for a long time because of this. He had found countless doctors to treat him. In the end, it was just a scam. Rongxiu's brows moved slightly, and he suddenly laughed. "Imperial father, if you had known about this earlier, would you still treat your son like this?" Emperor Jia suddenly choked. His face flushed red, but he couldn't say a single word. Rongxiu's expression became more and more mocking. If Emperor Jia had known that there was nothing wrong with his body and that his talent was excellent, he would have made a move on him long ago. How could there be a day like this? The so-called good was only built on the basis that he wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he had always said how much he loved his mother, but in the end, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most and even caused her to die of depression? In Rongxiu's opinion, Emperor Jiawen's words were simply a joke. When he saw Rongxiu's penetrating gaze, Emperor Jiawen swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the expression on his face disappeared, leaving only a cold and hard expression. "You want to stop me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so." After saying that, he once again began to devour the surrounding heaven and earth energy. The seal had already disappeared, and all the energy in his body had already surged out. As long as he broke through the final barrier of a stage 7 martial list, he could successfully enter the sky screen realm. Rongxiu raised his hand. Buzz! The sound of a sword instantly rang out. The silver longsword that had been stabbed in the ground earlier quickly flew over and landed in his hand. His feet shifted slightly, both hands gripping the sword hilt tightly as he stared intently at Emperor Jiawen. The sword rose. The sword fell. An incomparably tyrannical sword aura swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew into the air. Then, they were silently annihilated into dust by the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Jiawen saw Rongxiu make a move, he already had a bad feeling. When he saw that sword aura heading straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Rongxiu's strength had actually reached a stage 6 martial list. When cultivators were breaking through, they often needed to focus. The higher the level, the more it was so. Emperor Jia originally planned to set up an enchantment to block all attacks outside. But the moment Rongxiu made a move, he knew that it would not work. Helpless, he could only stop temporarily and turn around to receive Rongxiu's attack. Mountains and rivers fall. A blue origin power surged out from his palm. Then a second, a third. The surging origin power was like streams, quickly fusing together, turning into a surging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of surging water. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The piercingly cold sword aura arrived in an instant. The two forces collided fiercely. In an instant, that sword aura sank into the river, splashing water everywhere. Emperor Jia secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But in the next moment, he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle, completely split into two parts. The expression on Emperor Jia Wen's face suddenly froze. The attack on that sword aura did not seem to be weakened at all. The power contained in the sword chi was even stronger than he had expected. Following that sword aura went all the way up. The tyrannical aura caused Emperor Jia Wen's entire body to tense up. Swish! His origin power was completely pierced. That sword aura headed straight for his face. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly retreated. But at this moment, he suddenly felt as if a biting cold wind was attacking his back. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. Hurriedly looking to the side, he found that the one attacking him was actually the scarlet-tailed flood dragon. Roar! Missing its attack, the scarlet-tailed flood dragon became even more irritable. Half the sky reverberated with its deep and powerful roar. The onlookers on the ground also felt this powerful pressure, and their expressions all changed. Some of the weaker ones even directly vomited blood. But that pressure did not fall on Chu Liuyue's body. Imperceptibly, there seemed to be a transparent barrier that blocked the scarlet-tailed flood dragon's pressure outside. Chu Liyue looked around and blinked. So many people were affected, but why was she the only one not? After that, her gaze descended onto Shui Shui. I'm a divine beast. What is a mere scarlet-tailed flood dragon to me? The three-eyed godly eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. She had forgotten about this. The three-eyed godly eagle was in her dantian. Although outsiders did not know about it, demonic beasts were very sensitive to such things. That scarlet-tailed flood dragon is the guardian demonic beast of the Yaochen kingdom. Why would it attack Emperor Jiawen now? Chu Liyue murmured. Just as she was feeling puzzled, the sword chi had already landed on Emperor Jiawen's body. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 467. It was quiet in the bamboo forest. Only the sound of the bamboo leaves rustling in the wind could be heard. Chu Liyue felt that everything around her seemed to have stopped in an instant. Only the eyebrows of the person in front of her were exceptionally clear. Her voice was light and seemed to dissipate in the wind in an instant. However, she knew that Rongxiu had heard it. This was her biggest secret. She originally thought that it would be difficult to say it out loud. However, in the face of their impending separation, she realized that it was much easier to be honest with Rongxiu than she had imagined. This was because she really wanted to continue being with him. Rongxiu's eyes seemed to surge with emotions. After a moment, he looked into her eyes and said, "If you can't go back, I'll go." Chu Liyue was suddenly stunned. "Your Highness, why don't you ask me why I have enemies in the Tianling dynasty?" 10 years ago, she was just an abandoned, good-for-nothing daughter of a declining aristocratic family in country Yaochun. Logically speaking, it was impossible for her to have anything to do with the Tianling dynasty. However, Rongxiu didn't seem surprised or curious. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he smiled. "I only care about whether you Er's revenge is satisfying." Chu Liyue was stunned. Rongxiu leaned close to her ear. His warm breath sprayed on her ear, causing it to heat up slightly. "Wherever you goes, I will go too." The sky was clear, and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. Jian Fengqi flew on his sword, and Chu Liyue stood behind him. "Are you really leaving just like that?" Jian Fengqi glanced at Chu Liyue. "You won't be able to see your father and fiancé for a long time after this." Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows slightly. "Young Master Jian, can you help to bring them to the Tianling dynasty?" Jian Fengqi immediately said no. The Tianling dynasty's control was very strict. Everyone's identity had to go through heavy screening. In particular, the place they were heading to this time was the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, Xiling. Even if they could cross the heavens canopy and enter the Western Mausoleum, they would not be able to do so without a suitable reason and identity. Chu Liyue shrugged. This time, her future was unknown, so it would be more convenient for her to go alone. Jian Fengqi glanced at her from head to toe, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into an evil smile. However, that princely really hid himself well. With his strength, entering heaven's canopy shouldn't be a problem. Chu Luiwei glanced at him. Jian Fengqi seemed to be very interested in Rongxiu and kept talking about him along the way. She shook her head again. He has his own plans. Seeing that Chu Luiwei was still as impenetrable as ever, the smile on Jian Fengqi's face finally disappeared, and he snorted. I really don't know what you're thinking, being together with such a scheming person. Chu Luiwei couldn't be bothered with him. The two didn't speak again. After about an hour, they finally stopped at a mountain peak. Jian Fengqi jumped down and waved his sleeve lightly. Dust rose into the air. A teleportation array appeared in front of them. Chu Luiwei's eyes narrowed slightly, and she also jumped down and walked to Jian Fengqi's side. This is the teleportation array that I used to come here. Jian Fengqi lifted his chin. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. This mountain peak was southeast of the Imperial capital, and it was deserted. How could there be a teleportation array here? Seeing the shock and confusion on Chu Luiwei's face, Jian Fengqi thought that she was curious about the teleportation array, so he explained. This teleportation array can quickly send us to Heaven's Canopy. But to reach the Tianling dynasty, we still have to pass through 2 more teleportation arrays. Chu Luiwei lightly nodded. Other than cultivators who were trying to break through to become Stage 7 warriors and could take the initiative to summon Heaven's Canopy, everyone else had to personally go to where Heaven's Canopy was before they could enter. However, she was curious about something else. This teleportation array looks quite old. Jian Fengqi touched his chin. That's right. It also doesn't look like it's commonly used. I know about this because Mu Qinghe said that we can go from here. Actually, I was also very curious when I came here. There's actually a teleportation array that connects to Heaven's Canopy here. Emperor Zhaowen had been to the Tianling dynasty before, so there was such a teleportation array in the Imperial capital. However, it was a little strange for it to appear in such a place. Maybe it was built by cultivators in the past. Jian Fengqi didn't pay much attention to the teleportation array. As he spoke, he gathered force in his palm and slapped it on the teleportation array. A silver light flashed, and the teleportation array was activated. The two of them instantly disappeared from their original spot. The surroundings were dark, and Chu Luiwei could only hear the sound of the endless space flowing past her ears. Luckily, Jian Fengqi had set up a barrier, so she didn't feel too much pressure. After some time, a ray of light finally appeared in front of her. Jian Fengqi said, "It's coming out soon." Chu Luiwei's heart suddenly tightened. The next moment, the sky brightened up. She only felt a huge force coming from behind and pushing her and Jian Fengqi out. She staggered a step before she steadied herself. Look, this is the Heaven's Canopy that the Tianling dynasty is in charge of guarding. Jian Fengqi raised his hand and pointed in front. Chu Luiwei's body stiffened, and she slowly looked up. At this point, the two of them were standing on a cliff. Below the cliff was an endless, turbulent black-blue ocean. In the distance, where the ocean met the sky, a gigantic Heaven's Canopy fell from the dark sky. Thousands of streams of light flashed, like a galaxy in the distance. The vast and boundless pressure of the heavenly Tao poured out, almost covering the entire world. And in the middle of the Heaven's Canopy, there was a group of soldiers wearing black armor and holding long swords. They were lined up neatly in a row. Even from such a distance, Chu Luiwei could still clearly feel the murderous aura of those soldiers. In the entire Tianling dynasty, only the most elite and powerful soldiers were qualified to guard the Heaven's Canopy. Therefore, all of these people were 1 in a million strong. They stood there, dignified and solemn, as if they had already merged with the world. Chu Luiwei's hands trembled slightly in her sleeves, and the blood in her body seemed to freeze in an instant. But there seemed to be something burning in her chest and abdomen about to explode. How familiar this scene was. In 1645 of the Tianling dynasty, she had just become of marriageable age and had personally come to inspect this place as the Empress. At that time, thousands of soldiers had welcomed her respectfully. Their military flags had fluttered, and the honor guard had spread for hundreds of miles. At that time, she had never imagined that one day she would come here again in such a manner. Jian Fengqi saw that Chu Liyue's expression seemed a little off. He couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Chu Liyue's eyes flashed, and a perfect smile appeared on her face. "I'm just a little nervous." "Young Master Jian, don't worry." Jian Fengqi nodded. After all, it was her first time here. It was normal to be nervous. "This is the Tianling dynasty's Heaven's Canopy. Who are you?" A dignified voice came from afar. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 468. Jian Fengqi threw out a token, which floated in mid-air. A faint pressure spread from it. Jian Fengqi raised his voice. "Jian Fengqi from Dragon Teeth Mountain." "So it's young Master Jian." At the mention of Jian Fengqi's voice, the soldier's voice immediately became much more respectful. "May I know who is beside you? Take out the token that Mu Qinghe left for you," Jian Fengqi said softly. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and took out the token. It also floated in the air. Chu Liyue from country Yao Chun. Her voice sounded as clear and calm as usual, but in reality, her palms were already wet. After verifying that their tokens were correct, that person said, "Vice Admiral Mu has already instructed that the two of you can enter together. Please." With that, a wave rippled above Heaven's Canopy. Immediately after, a long bridge extended from Heaven's Canopy and stopped in front of the two of them. Jian Fengqi and Chu Liyue looked at each other. "Let's go." With that, he took the lead and walked onto the long bridge. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and followed closely behind him. The two of them walked on the long bridge and got closer and closer to the entrance. Chu Liyue could already see the faces of the soldiers clearly. Looking at the entrance in front of her, her heart beat faster and faster. "Young Master Jian, Miss Chu, please." At this moment, a wave suddenly came from afar. Chu Liyue turned around and saw two figures appear on the cliff. It was a man and a woman who looked very young. Seeing the long bridge in front of them, the man laughed loudly. "The bridge just appeared. Yunji, we will definitely make it this time. You're not worried about being late, are you?" The woman chuckled. "Yunji has never been here before, so it's inevitable that I'm a little nervous." "Cousin, why are you making fun of me? Besides, I'm just worried that I'll delay you." The man laughed. "There's still some time before the deadline. Don't worry. Let's go. This time, I'll show you the Tianling dynasty." The woman's face was filled with anticipation. The man tossed out the token in his hand. "I, Chun Shiyuan, disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect, have brought Zhao Yunji of the Suiyang Empire with me." Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes. So they were from the Soaring Cloud sect. From the looks of it, the woman was like her, brought here because she possessed the Daijing Yuan Meridian. She had thought that only the Black Cavalry, including Mu Qinghe, would do this. She did not expect the Soaring Cloud sect to send someone as well. It seemed that the scale of this matter had far exceeded her expectations. After Chun Shiyuan finished speaking, he put away the token and walked towards the bridge in high spirits. "Hold on." Jian Fengqi suddenly opened his mouth and said lazily, "This Lin Xiao was specially summoned for me and Lu Yu. According to the rules, they have to wait for us to enter and verify our identities before they can summon Lin Xiao again. What's with sharing a room with us?" Before the soldier in charge of guarding the bridge could say anything, Chun Xin, who was behind him, laughed and said, "You too. It seems that you've just arrived. It shouldn't be a problem for you to lend us this Lin Xiao, right? If we go together, we won't have to summon Lin Xiao again. Isn't that perfect?" Jian Fengqi crossed his arms as his lips curled up into a cold smile. "It seems that not only do you not understand the rules of first come, first served, even your ears are not very good. I already said that I don't agree. Did you not hear me? What perfect? He did not think it was perfect at all. Chu Liyue coughed softly. She almost forgot that Dragon Teeth Mountain and the Sky-Soaring clan had been enemies for thousands of years, and there were countless grudges between them. Hence, Jian Fengqi naturally didn't like Chen Shiyuan, who came from the Sky-Soaring clan. Moreover, according to his picky personality, he would never agree to such a thing, let alone these two people. Jian Fengqi's words made Chen Shiyuan's expression turn ugly. He had only asked to cross the Lin Xiao together. It was not a big deal, but the other party was so aggressive. Damn it! Saying these words in front of so many people made him lose even more face. Today was the first time he brought his cousin, Zhao Yunji. If he admitted it now, how could he raise his head in front of his cousin in the future? His voice turned cold. Young master, I only asked you for a small favor. Why do you have to be like this? Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Unfortunately, I have never liked to help. Chen Shiyuan was so angry that he laughed. He tidied his clothes and raised his chin slightly. It seems that this young master still does not know my identity. I am the younger brother of the Soaring Cloud sect master. Jian Fengqi raised his finger and shook it, interrupting Chen Shiyuan's words. TSK, I have no interest in your identity at all. As he spoke, he turned to look at the guards and raised his sword-like eyebrows. The two guards standing on both sides of the entrance looked at each other, then looked at Chen Shiyuan and Jian Fengqi in the distance with a cold expression. You should wait first. The smile on Chen Shiyuan's face suddenly froze. The Soaring Cloud sect had a high status in the entire Tianling dynasty and was treated with respect wherever they went. He had never been treated like this before. He was about to go forward and argue with them, but he was pulled back by Zhao Yunji behind him. Zhao Yunji whispered, Cousin, let's not argue with them. Let them go first. Jian Fengqi originally had 1 foot in the entrance, but when he heard this, he looked back and laughed softly. Let them go. Why did it sound like they were in the wrong? The people of the Soaring Cloud sect were shameless, but he did not expect that the people they brought were also like this. Chu Liyue held her breath and walked in through the entrance. The flowing light of heaven's canopy swept across her body, as if it wanted to see through her completely in an instant. Buzz! A faint sound was suddenly heard. There was a sudden movement in heaven's canopy. Chu Liyue was shocked. This movement seemed to be because of the water droplets in her body. The surrounding soldiers noticed this movement and immediately looked at Chu Liyue with vigilance. Even Jian Fengqi looked back. Chu Liyue's mind moved, and she forcefully suppressed the movement of the water droplets. The strange sound also disappeared in an instant. What happened just now? The soldiers on guard stared at Chu Liyue, their eyes full of suspicion. Chu Liyue shook her head innocently. I don't know either. Jian Fengqi looked up at heaven's canopy and frowned slightly. It should be a common movement. Only then did the soldiers relax a little. Sometimes, heaven's canopy would indeed be like this. If there was really something wrong with Chu Liyue, the movement would not have disappeared instantly. Seeing that the soldiers were still suspicious, Jian Fengqi smiled and said, Don't tell me you don't trust the person Mu Qinghe chose? The soldiers' expressions changed slightly. Of course not. The two of you, please. Chu Liyue felt as if a rock had been lifted from her heart. She walked forward and crossed heaven's canopy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.